Chapter 141. At the peak of the king level, Ye Tian raw physical strength equaled that of 10,000 elephants. After the augmentation from his Yuan force, it doubled to the equivalent of 20,000 elephants. Reaching the pseudo-Upanishads tier multiplied his power by 30, and the silver tier sword technique, Heaven Pole Slash, amplified his damage by another 12-fold. Stacking all those multipliers together, Ye Tian's single strongest attack worked out to 7.2 million power units, which, when converted into Dragon Force, amounted to only 7.2 Dragon Force. He frowned. I only had 7.2 Dragon Force at the King Peak. How did I jump to 8.2 Dragon Force when I became a Tomahawk Grand Emperor? For the first time, Ye Tian felt plainly outclassed by someone's innate talent. He wasn't discouraged. If anything, he was thrilled. The Tomahawk Grand Emperor's talent had to be extraordinary. If Ye Tian could copy that talent, his own strength would skyrocket. Ye Tian worked it out in his head. The Tomahawk Emperor must possess a power talent at least at the pseudo-Upanishads level, perhaps even a true Upanishads level power talent by now. And on top of that, a weapon talent, likely a top-rank talent. That combination would explain how the Tomahawk Emperor's Dragon Force exceeded his own. If he could obtain and emulate those talents, his progress would be instantaneous. The Tomahawk Emperor uses an axe, Ye Tian guessed. His axe skills are famous. He should be a top-tier Tomahawk talent. If the Tomahawk Emperor also possessed the pseudo-Upanishad power talent that surpassed Ye Tian's, stacked with the top Tomahawk talent, and then factored in Ye Tian's own 20,000 Vientian power, that combination would explain the Tomahawk Emperor's 8.2 Dragon Power rating. Ye Tian then checked the strongest defense record and felt a chill. He couldn't hope to beat it. King-level strongest defense record proved able to withstand the power of 2 dragons without serious injury. Creator Qin Feng. At king level, a fighter can survive blows equal to their own attack power. For Ye Tian, that base threshold was 20,000 Vientian. If he reached the king-level peak and gained the 50-fold defensive multiplier from the pseudo-Upanishad talent, he could only endure the force of a single dragon. Even adding the pseudo-Oyi level, Diamond Bone talent, would raise his resistance to about 1.5 times a dragon's attack without severe injury. That still fell short of Qin Feng's 2-dragon benchmark. Ye Tian sighed. With the resources and talents he currently knew about, he simply couldn't surpass that defense record. Enduring the force of 1.5 dragons would still not be enough to break the king-level record for strongest defense, at least not unless Ye Tian could reproduce another top-tier, pseudo-mystical defensive talent. There were other records he still couldn't touch, too. He grinned. Zhonghai Superbase certainly harbored all kinds of oddballs, but that was to his advantage. More unusual talents for him to copy. Now that he'd secured this exceptional ability, it was only a matter of time before he started chipping away at those records. He'd be deliberate about it, though. Break 2 or 3 records quietly, and leave others room to save face. Since he couldn't surpass the record right away, Ye Tian left the God of War Tower. His copy talent cooldown had just ended. He could copy 2 more talents. Loitering at the tower's gate to snag more abilities would be a waste of time. Better to go straight to the Scattered Alliance headquarters. There should be something useful there. With that plan, Ye Tian headed to the Scattered Alliance. Its headquarters sat not far from the God of War Tower, still within the Middle Sea area, so the trip was quick. The Scattered Cultivation Alliance headquarters was vast and imposing. Its grounds stretched for more than 10 miles in radius, and the complex was stacked into 10 tiers. Ye Tian moved through the compound, testing and searching as he went. His replication ability now reached out to about 1,500 meters, but the headquarters was far larger than that, so he had to sweep it piece by piece. When he reached the center of the first tier, 2 Huyu-grade talents registered in his senses. He copied only one of them. He only needed a single additional Huyu-grade talent, so there was no reason to duplicate both. Half an hour later, having nearly finished his inspection of the headquarters, Ye Tian found that those 2 were the only Huyu-level talents present. Morningstar cultivation talents have only about a 70 to 80% chance of reaching Saint level. Unless their foundation is perfect, in which case they're guaranteed to become saints. By the same logic, a Huiwei level talent has roughly a 70 to 80% chance of becoming an emperor. With a perfect foundation, that chance becomes 100%. Since the strongest cultivator in the Zhonghai Superbase is only an emperor and there are no Shiri level talents present, the best talent available there must be only Huiyue level. Ye Tian worked it out from that. Huiyue level talents had to be extremely rare in the Zhonghai Superbase. Even counting scattered branches and allied factions, their number probably wouldn't reach double digits. That meant one thing. After returning and fusing with a Huiyue level cultivation talent, his own talent had likely become the single strongest one in the entire base. The thought made him quietly elated. There should have been a record of it somewhere, but the God of War monument didn't have it. Even if the monument did contain that record, it wouldn't dare display such a thing openly. Still, there was another chance to copy it. Ye Tian went looking for more pseudo-Upanishads level talents. He only found two he didn't really want, a pseudo-Upanishads fire domain talent and a pseudo-Upanishads water dragon talent. Neither was particularly useful to him, and he felt a little disappointed. In the end, he decided to take the fire domain talent anyway. Another method was better than none. With a single thought, he copied the pseudo-Upanishads fire domain talent. He didn't stay to browse the rest of the scattered Cultivation Alliance headquarters. There were plenty of tempting things there, but he couldn't afford them, and the situation was embarrassingly obvious. So he left. Back home, Ye Tian fused the pseudo-Upanishads fire domain talent into himself and quickly mastered its techniques. This talent was extraordinary, a large-scale area attack that could open a fire domain, turning dozens of miles into a blazing expanse. Any living thing caught inside would be assailed by countless flames. It would also compensate for one of Ye Tian's weaknesses, and it was classified as a 30% pseudo-esoteric level talent. Ye Tian immediately began fusing the Huiyue grade cultivation talent once more. This time, he was attempting to transform the Huiyue talent up to the next level. Rumbles shook him as pain surged through his body. It was agony, but somehow he was elated at the same time. Come on. Shi grade cultivation talent, he urged himself. Boom! Wave after wave of torment tore through him. His skin flushed bright red, like a cooked lobster. He held on as long as he could, but eventually the pain overcame him, and he fainted. When he came to, a little later, he felt both embarrassed and relieved. He had hoped to withstand it this time and not black out. Fortunately, losing consciousness hadn't interrupted the process. The fusion had completed successfully. Cultivation talent. Ye Tian grinned as he scanned the pile of talent readings and spotted the label. Shiri level. Ha ha ha, Xiao Blood actually has a talent level, he laughed aloud. He felt a little embarrassed too. If it hadn't been this way, Xiao Blood's bloodline talent would still be at Shiri level, while his own master talent was only Huiyue level, a thought that made him chuckle at the irony. He couldn't share the moment with Xiao Blood. The creature was asleep. Xiao Blood had told him it was on the verge of transitioning from infancy to adolescence. Once it had reached the juvenile stage, its C-grade bloodline talent would begin to manifest, and its cultivation speed would jump dramatically. Can't wait to try out the Shiri cultivation speed, Ye Tian said to himself, practically buzzing with excitement. Chapter 142. Ye Tian stepped into the high-level cultivation chamber, drank a mouthful of the king-level fierce beast's blood, and began to practice the purple blood-punching acupuncture technique. A low roar of power filled the room as far more heaven and earth yuan qi than before surged into him, condensing rapidly into yuan force to assist his strikes on the acupoints. A day passed. Ye Tian checked his progress and smiled. With his cultivation speed tripled, he calculated, at this rate I can open 45 acupoints in a month. Such rapid advancement was nearly miraculous. If he could train in the top-level chamber, his speed would increase again, but even now Ye Tian was satisfied. My base cultivation is still too weak. I'll make the most of this time and push harder. So he did. Day by day, in that high-level chamber, Ye Tian unlocked one acupoint after another. With each opening, his body grew stronger, his power rising at an astonishing rate. The surge of strength hit him like a jolt, pure power, exhilarating. Over the next month, Ye Tian managed to open another 45 acupuncture points. Together with the ones he'd already unlocked, he now had 63 points in all. His physical strength climbed to nearly 1,800 elephant power, and his maximum attack output reached 1,296,000 elephant power, about 1.3 dragon power. Crossing that dragon power threshold thrilled him. He still had a long way to go before matching the Tomahawk Emperor's record 8.2 dragon power, but this was a major step forward. Even better, his copy talent was ready to use again. With that ability back online, Ye Tian decided to head to the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall's headquarters. If he ran into the Tomahawk Emperor there, he might be able to make a lot of money. He left at once and made for the hall's main grounds. The Tomahawk Mercenary Hall's headquarters sprawled across roughly 100 miles. It was a hub for powerful figures. Countless king-level practitioners passed through its gates, and every so often a saint-level expert would show up. Ye Tian had been standing outside the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall headquarters for 3 hours and still couldn't get in. The building wasn't open to the public. Only core members of the Tomahawk Hall and mercenaries of silver rank or higher were allowed past the gates. He wasn't even a registered mercenary. Muttering to himself, he decided to take care of that at once. Most of the people at the Zhonghai Superbase had already registered, and he'd likely need the credentials sooner rather than later. Better to get it done now. Registration wasn't handled at the headquarters anyway, but at the local branches. He went back to the Battle Axe Mercenary Hall branch in the Mirror Lake district, signed up, and was issued a black iron mercenary token. The mercenary ranks ran black iron, bronze, silver, and gold, and each rank was graded from 1 star to 9 stars. He was now a black iron 1 star, the lowest possible entry level. To rise in rank, he would have to take on missions. Some missions required a mercenary rank, while others only looked at one's cultivation. Although Ye Tian's mercenary grade was only black iron, 1 star, his cultivation had already reached the king level, so there weren't many good jobs he could accept. Staying secluded hadn't done him any favors. His emotions were getting frayed, so he decided to check the available missions. Maybe a job would lead him to some exceptional talent he could recruit. The mission types varied widely: laying out formations, hunting beasts, exploring unknown maps, even venturing to the far end of a space rift. Tasks on the other side of a rift were extremely lucrative and awarded huge point bonuses, precisely because they were so dangerous. Ye Tian remembered a little about the 5-star rift. It lay 700,000 kilometers southwest of the Zhonghai Superbase. The rift couldn't be sealed, but the base's elite had forced their way across it and established a tenuous stalemate, each side pressing against the other. For a century, they'd been hestying over both ends of the breach. Sometimes humans launched attacks across it, and sometimes they were driven back in counterattacks. That was all Ye Tian knew. The so-called reconnaissance mission would require penetrating 10,000 kilometers past the rift to gather further intelligence, an extraordinarily dangerous assignment. Given his limited understanding of the Zhonghai Superbase, he had no intention of volunteering for it. Then suddenly, a different task caught his eye. Task: assist in subjugating a fierce beast. Publisher Shiwa, Holy Maiden of the Moon God Sect. Requirements: king rank strength and beast taming talent of high grade or above. Rewards: choose either a 3rd rank Supreme Yuan Force manual or a top grade cultivation chamber. Alternatively, receive monetary compensation equivalent to the listed price. 3rd rank Supreme Yuan Force manual. Ye Tian couldn't hide the stir of excitement. He was currently practicing the advanced Yuanli body tempering technique. In the Demon Sea Grand Base, that art was a staple for every major family. In the Zhonghai Superbase, the advanced Yuanli method was ubiquitous. Many fledgling martial artists begin with it, and a surprising number of king-level seniors had gone on to master the Supreme Yuan Force techniques. A 3rd rank Supreme manual was exactly the sort of breakthrough he needed. In the Scattered Cultivation Alliance, top-tier Yuanli secret arts were notoriously difficult to come by. The Alliance's practitioners dealt almost entirely in equivalent exchange. Senior cultivators might possess those high-level techniques, but they would never part with them unless the offer matched the art's true value. Members of the major sects might practice the highest Yuanli mysteries, but those techniques were closely guarded, non-transferable, rarely taught, and almost never traded. Ye Tian was in a difficult position. He couldn't obtain a top-level Yuanli secret art because he had nothing of sufficient value to trade for one, and he had no desire to join another top force to gain access. So when an opportunity presented itself, it felt like a miracle. Not just any top-level Yuanli secret art, but a rare third-grade top-tier Yuanli secret, a class above the ordinary top-level mysteries. This was exactly the kind of chance Ye Tian needed. The Zhongai Superbase had sorted its top Yuanli cultivation secrets into 5 tiers, from 5th to 1st. The 5th tier top-level secrets boosted the effect of a high-grade Yuanli body forging technique by 2 times. The 4th tier boosted it by 2.5 times. The 3rd tier boosted it by 3 times. If Ye Tian could get his hands on a 3rd tier top-level Yuanli secret, his cultivation speed would triple, effectively raising his innate talent by an entire level. I have to get it, he thought, clenching his fists. He also knew that rewards that generous always meant great danger. Still, he was confident he could qualify for the mission. He was on the king list, and crucially, he possessed an aptitude for high-level beast control that met the task's requirements. The saintess of the lunar sect would have wanted to subdue a ferocious beast, but she had no beast-taming talent. Only a king-level powerhouse, someone whose strength shows up on the king's list, would be able to accept such a creature if she possessed a high-grade beast control talent. What kind of beast could possibly be worth that price? Ye Tian's curiosity sharpened. It wasn't directly his opportunity, but if the beast's talent proved particularly vicious, he might be able to copy it for himself. Besides, the saintess might possess a valuable talent of her own. I'll take it, Ye Tian decided. Chapter 143. The mission posted by the Sunset Moon Saintess of the Moon Gods didn't require any particular mercenary rank. All it demanded was exceptional beast control talent and strength at the king list level. Confident he met those qualifications, Ye Tian submitted an application to the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall and demonstrated his high-level beast control ability. In less than half a day, the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall verified his credentials and approved him for the job. Ye Tian was awarded the task. The hall also notified the Moon God sect immediately, letting the Sunset Moon Saintess know someone had accepted her commission. The Luna sect is a major power based at the China Sea Superbase. It isn't on the same tier as the 4 great forces, but it ranks among the top influential factions in the region. Shui Chunyue, who holds 8th place on the sacred list, is one of the Luna sect's senior members. The Luna sect was founded by modern humans and admits only talented female disciples. Even if a female disciple marries and gives birth to a son, that boy may never become a full member of the sect. At best, he can join its peripheral forces. It was an unbreakable tradition of the Luna sect. At that moment, inside the sect, a woman in green stood in a small attic and frowned at a notice from the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall. "Someone has already accepted the mission I posted," she murmured. She was the holy daughter of the Sunset Moon. "Bring them in," she called. With that call, several king-rank women appeared at her side, bowing low. "Holy daughter, what are your orders?" "The task I posted has been accepted by a beast control talent at the king level." "They may go," the holy daughter announced. "Understood," the women replied in unison. Jinghu District, Mingyue Restaurant, a Luna sect property. Ye Tian waited there at the rendezvous point indicated for the mission. Not long after, a group of women approached, among them the Moon Saint's daughter from the Lunar God sect and the famed Shiwei Saintess. Ye Tian didn't recognize the Shiwei Saintess at first, but the excited whispers and murmurs from the crowd made her identity obvious. Realizing who she was, he stepped forward. "Lady Shiwei, I accept your task," he said simply. The Shiwei Saintess studied him for a long moment. "You're Ye Tian from the Epicenter Sea Superbase, aren't you? I heard about your work there. I didn't expect you'd be so gifted at controlling high-level beasts." She regarded him coolly. "If you help me subdue the beast, extract its soul light, and hand it over, I will reward you as the task requires, and the mission will be complete." "What kind of beast is it?" Ye Tian asked. The Shiwei Saintess glanced around and then answered swiftly, "You'll see when we arrive. For now, I can only tell you this. It's a king-class beast. Ye Tian was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. Understood. Then let us go, the Shui Saintess said. Ye Tian walked slowly away with the Sunset Moon Saint daughter and her retinue toward the edge of the Zhonghai superbase. As they moved, he studied the saint daughter and her handmaidens carefully. Her talent was extraordinary. He thought back to Li Yuling, whose morning star talent and beauty had impressed him, but Li Yuling didn't compare to this Sunset Moon Saint daughter. The difference in raw ability was obvious. In Ye Tian's mind, the saint daughter's strengths sorted themselves out clearly. Name, Wang Xiyue. Cultivation talent, Huiyue level. Moon talent, advanced. Speed talent, quasi-esoteric, Ichis. Sword talent, top tier. Strength talent, medium. Defense talent, quasi-esoteric, 30%. Two quasi-esoteric level talents indicated the use of rare treasures to forge an exceptionally solid foundation. Coupled with a top-ranked sword talent and decent strength, that made her truly worthy of the title Holy Daughter of the Lunar God Sect. He also remembered seeing her on the king list. Wang Xiyue was ranked 27th and belonged to the Lunar God Sect. There was no doubt it had to be her. Compared to Wang Xiyue, Ye Tian still lagged behind in raw power. But at the rate he was improving, it was only a matter of time before he overtook the Sunset Moon Saint daughter. The other women weren't weak either. Each of them had one or two distinctive talents and were clearly exceptional in their own right. Ye Tian hesitated. He had 2 copies available, and he wanted both of Wang Xiyue's Pseudo-Upanishad's speed talent and her Pseudo-Upanishad's defense talent. The catch was that once he used one copy, he couldn't use the other for a month. This time, Wang Xiyue intended to subdue a fierce beast. If that beast possessed a rare or unusual ability, he might miss the chance to duplicate it later. In the end, he decided to copy one first and wait to see what the beast's talent would be. He chose to copy Wang Xiyue's Pseudo-Upanishad speed talent. His own speed aptitude was only high tier, good, but noticeably weaker than many of the special talents around him, so boosting his speed made the most sense. Ye Tian already possessed a Pseudo-Upanishad's defensive talent. Even if he copied the Sunset Moon Saint daughter's version of that talent, it wouldn't let him upgrade it into a true Upanishad's level ability yet, so there was no hurry. He could always copy it another time. He had just succeeded in copying one ability. The pseudo-esoteric speed talent had manifested within him. Now wasn't the right moment to attempt integration. He and the others would have a better opportunity to fuse their talents later. Not long after, Ye Tian, the Sunset Moon Saint daughter, and the rest departed the Zhonghai superbase. "Where are we headed?" Ye Tian asked, curiosity in his voice. "A secret realm?" Saintess Shiyu said frankly, "That place is only a 3-star secret realm. At best it allows king-class cultivators to enter, and that ferocious beast will be difficult to capture alive. If I could, I'd simply hire someone to trap it. Ask one of the top beast handlers at the Zhonghai superbase to help tame it there. No need to post the task publicly." She frowned. "Unfortunately, there aren't many high-level beast control experts at Zhonghai. King-class handlers are especially rare, and right now, you're basically the only one who qualifies." Ye Tian nodded. He felt a flash of relief. If luck hadn't put him in that position, the 3rd-class top Yuan Force cultivation manual would have slipped through his fingers. King-class speed was formidable, and they moved quickly. They had little to fear from beast attacks. The dangerous creatures around the superbase had largely been cleared, and near the 5-star spatial rift humans held the advantage, so more powerful beasts couldn't come through for the moment. There was no need to worry. A few minutes later, a vast floating fortress loomed into view before them. 3 large characters were carved above the fortress gate. Luna Castle. "This is a hidden domain belonging to our Luna sect," the Sunset Moon Saint daughter said, "and that 3-star spatial rift is inside the castle." Ye Tian's surprise was immediate, but it didn't last long. If the Demon Sea Grand Base could occupy a secret realm, pour out great warriors every 10 years, and be strong enough that the Lunar God Sect once swept through it with a single core genius, then it wasn't so strange that the Luna Sect would control its own secret domain. They passed through the gates of Luna Castle and soon came to the 3-star rift. The castle had no saint-level sentries, only king-level guards, and there wasn't a single Morning Star-level prodigy in sight. That lack of protection made it clear the place wasn't held in high regard. Ye Tian, the Sunset Moon Saint Daughter, and the others didn't hesitate. They stepped through the rift and entered the 3-star secret realm. Chapter 144. Ye Tian frowned as he stepped into the secret realm. It had been rated a 3-star realm, but the life force here was shockingly thin, far weaker than the heaven and earth Yuanqi of the 1-star secret realm back at the Demon Sea Grand Base. He could sense immediately that the realm's resources had been heavily drained. The lunar god sect has basically mined this place clean, the Virgin of the Sunset Moon said calmly. When the resources are gone, the Yuanqi naturally grows tenuous. The ranking of a secret realm, however, is determined by its rules, and those rules cannot be altered, not even by an emperor. That's why this place remains a 3-star realm in name, even though its vitality has been exhausted. Ye Tian nodded, understanding. He raised his head and looked at the clearing ahead where something had stirred. Sunset Moon Saintess, he asked, can you tell me what kind of fierce beast is here now? Of course you can. The Sunset Moon Saint Daughter spoke slowly. This secret realm originally had no resources and wasn't considered valuable. When I was promoted to Saint Daughter of the Lunar God Sect, the sect master assigned it to me to oversee for 50 years. I never paid it much attention at first, but by chance I discovered a beast had been born there. It's only a king-rank beast. I can suppress it, but I can't capture it. I don't even know its name. It possesses an extraordinary talent, almost like a legendary one. She paused, then added, I'll tell you, but you mustn't tell anyone, at least for 10 years. Very few people in the Lunar God Sect even know the nature of its ability. I won't tell a soul, Ye Tian assured her. The Sunset Moon Saint Daughter didn't demand an oath. With her rank, even if the secret leaked, no one would try to seize the realm. At most, it would cause her some extra trouble. The Moon Saint Daughter drew a deep breath and said, its talent is almost identical to the time talent. Time talent, Ye Tian cried, stunned and hardly able to believe it. Among the two supreme talents, space and time, space had been seen before, if rarely. Time, however, was practically unheard of. There were records of ferocious beasts with weak space talents, but a time talent had never shown up in the archives. No wonder the Moon Saint Daughter looked so moved. She explained the ability plainly. The time talent lets a creature either speed up or slow down the flow of time. Speeding up time causes time in the user's vicinity to race forward, making their movements unbelievably fast. Slowing time is usually used against an opponent, stretching out that enemy's personal time so their actions become sluggish and slow to the observer. When the Sunset Moon Saintess faced that ferocious beast, she found herself helpless against its time ability. The power warped even her thoughts. One moment everything seemed to speed up, the next it dragged, making it almost impossible to land an attack, much less capture the creature. After a quick assessment, she decided that if someone with a strong talent for controlling beasts joined her, and she assisted in suppressing the creature, they might stand a chance of calming it. Ye Tian, she said. I know your strength is considerable, enough to keep you safe, but I need you to fully unleash your beast control talent. Your task is to control it, not to fight it. Leave the fighting to me. Ye Tian gave a quick nod, but his attention was already fixed on the beast's time ability. Inside he was grinning. He had deliberately left himself a way to copy others' talents, and he could already picture taking this creature's time power for himself. He could hardly wait to see it up close. The Sunset Moon Saint Daughter had left a tracking scent on the beast, and the aroma clung stubbornly to the air. One of the maids, gifted with a tracking talent, pulled out a small pinch of the powder, inhaled, and activated her ability. She pointed sharply in one direction. There! Ye Tian, who had earlier copied a tracking talent for himself, discreetly took a quick sniff of the scent and triggered his own skill. He caught a faint trace coming from the same direction. The Sunset Moon Saint Daughter's voice fell deep and decisive. Head straight that way. They surged forward at once. Within moments, they spotted the creature, a silvery white rat the size of a calf, crouched and skittish rather than fierce. When they were about 1,500 meters away, Ye Tian used his copying talent to probe the beast's innate ability. They were facing a space-time silver rat, a rare creature with two supreme gifts, a time talent and a space talent. The space ability, however, was weak. It only provided heightened spatial perception. Because of that limitation, the Moon Saint daughter had no idea the rat even possessed a space talent. The rat itself was called Ye Tian Dark Road. Its time talent was only at the primary rank, but unusually potent for that level. It also had an elementary power talent and an advanced golden retriever talent, making it deceptively resilient. "Be careful," the holy lady of the sunset moon warned her handmaidens. "This beast can launch the hairs from its body as projectiles. Those strikes are devastating. They can't be stopped without king-tier strength. Do not approach it. Pull back and form a perimeter around it. If it tries to break out, open the formation at the right moment to intercept and stop it." "Yes, holy lady," her handmaidens answered. They immediately fell back, spreading out and establishing a containment formation that covered tens of miles. They did not open the formation. If they had, the space-time silver rat would have sensed it instantly and escaped. Ye Tian had no intention of letting that happen. Quietly, he copied the silver rat's elementary time talent and waited for the sunset moon saint daughter to make her move. Swish! She was the first to strike. The combination of her king-level extreme cultivation and a pseudo-Upanishad's grade speed talent made her a blur. Ye Tian's pupils narrowed because he couldn't even make out her outline. Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, her motion slowed dramatically, as if some force resisted her momentum. Ye Tian realized what was happening. She was using an ability to decelerate time in her immediate vicinity, causing her to move slowly from his perspective while time elsewhere remained unchanged. Of course, slow was relative. Even when it decelerated, the space-time silver rat still moved far faster than Ye Tian. "Ye Tian, use the beast control talent," the holy lady of the sunset moon cried. Ye Tian didn't hesitate. He activated his high-level beast control talent. A deep rumble rolled through the air as a wave of psychic fluctuation burst outward and wrapped around the rat. The space-time silver rat sensed the intrusion and immediately triggered its temporal slowing ability, its movements dragging as if wading through molasses. Even so, the rat couldn't evade. Despite its countermeasure and the holy lady's interference, it was overwhelmed by Ye Tian's control aura. The talent probed deeper, slipping into the very depths of the creature's soul. The rat let out a tortured wail as pain flared through it. Seizing the moment, the holy lady of the sunset moon lunged forward and struck at the space-time silver rat with a single, decisive slash of her sword. This time, the space-time silver rat couldn't dodge. A sword cut into it and sent it flying backward, badly wounded. Enraged, it unleashed its golden retriever talent. A filament of golden light erupted from its body and shot out in every direction like a spray of needles, filling the void. The sunset moon saintess immediately countered with pseudo-Upanishads, using them like a talent to intercept the golden needles. Nearby, Ye Tian activated his pseudo-Upanishad's defensive talent and the pseudo-Upanishad's grade diamond bone talent, and the attacks failed to harm him as well. Then, in a move that stunned everyone, the sunset moon saintess did the unexpected. She stepped forward and directly embraced the space-time silver rat. Chapter 145. Quick, hold this beast down with everything you've got. The sunset moon saint daughter shouted. It was a desperate, almost reckless move. If the time and space silver rat hadn't already been wounded and its spirit shaken, her time talent alone wouldn't have been enough to restrain it. Still, she threw herself at the creature, clamping her hands around its neck and refusing to let go, even if it cost her life. In raw strength, the time and space silver rat wasn't impressive, and its high golden retriever talent couldn't break through the saint daughter's pseudo-Upanishad's defensive talent, so it couldn't free itself from her grasp. Not far away, Ye Tian stared in stunned silence. The sunset moon saint daughter had abandoned every shred of decorum. A woman of her rank behaving so fiercely, without any concern for her image, was startling. He didn't linger on shock for long. Ye Tian poured everything into activating his high-control beast talent and moved in. He closed on the time and space silver rat, continuously sending his influence outward, working to dominate the creature's will. "Oh yes! Yes!" The time and space silver rat seemed to respond to the command, awakening its bloodline power. Its golden retriever ability flared with a terrible, icy light, as if the very fabric of time and space were being invoked. The sunset moon saint daughter cried out, "No, Ye Tian! Get away!" With the bloodline stimulated, the time and space silver rat surged upward. The power of its golden retriever talent soared, a slender golden needle formed, humming with void-piercing power. The first to be struck was the sunset moon saint daughter herself. She was a king-level ultimate and possessed a pseudo-Upanishads-level talent. Her defenses far outmatched Ye Tian's, yet the golden needle still pierced her. She had warned Ye Tian because she feared he wouldn't be able to withstand the attack, but she also knew that at such close range he would find it almost impossible to dodge. Ye Tian could have teleported away, but he didn't bother. The golden needles couldn't kill him. One after another they struck, piercing his flesh, yet he calmly activated his supreme healing gift. His wounds closed as if they had never been. Even the organs that had been impaled knitted themselves back together in moments. He felt a flash of surprise. He had only expected the golden retriever talent to be strong. He hadn't realized that when the bloodline's power was triggered, it could become this fearsome. The space-time silver rat's bloodline carried a trace of time-space energy. Even that faint time-space force amplified the needle's power enough to breach his defenses. His pseudo-Upanishads diamond bone talent protected his skeleton. The golden needles could not pierce the diamond-hard bones, but that protection didn't extend to flesh and organs. The needles simply passed through the soft tissue between the bones. Because his healing activated so quickly, it had seemed dramatic but was never truly lethal. This time there was no real danger. He was safe. The time and space silver rat's resistance faded quickly. Ye Tian drew the soul light from deep within the creature and poured it into an empty talisman, crafting a crude beast control card. He handed the newly formed card to the sunset moon saintess, who set about refining it. "Success!" she cried as the card took hold. The saintess placed the card against the rat and began speaking to it. Whatever she said must have been persuasive. Within moments, the silver rat's will broke. It stopped struggling, bowed to her command, and quietly accepted its new role as a tamed companion. "Eat it," the saintess ordered, offering a small elixir pill. The silver rat took it, and its wounds closed almost immediately. "Elixir!" she exclaimed at the rapid recovery. Ye Tian watched the pill in her hand and felt an idea ignite in his mind. Perhaps he, too, should become an alchemist. Alchemists, like array mages, require innate talent, and they're even rarer than array specialists. A skilled alchemist can use medicinal ingredients to refine true elixirs, whose potency far exceeds the healing serums churned out by an assembly line. Ye Tian had no intention of studying alchemy. Time was limited, and spreading himself across too many disciplines would only make him mediocre. His primary calling was martial arts, and strengthening his combat ability had to come first. If one day he found himself with abundant free time, then perhaps he would take up alchemy. After a short while, the time and space silver rat had nearly fully recovered and trailed obediently behind the sunset moon saint daughter. "It's time to leave," she called. The saintess of Shiwei, the sunset moon saintess, was in an unusually generous mood. "What reward would you like?" she asked. "A third-rank top yuan secret cultivation art, use of the best cultivation chamber, money, or some other treasure. Name it. If it's within my power, I'll give it to you." She didn't begrudge him any prize. Ye Tian had done far more than was expected, even putting himself at risk. Had it not been for his uncanny ability to recover, she thought, he might not have survived. She didn't pry into how he'd healed so quickly, but she filed the favor away. "A third-rank top yuan cultivation secret," Ye Tian said simply. "Are you sure?" the saintess asked. "Yes," Ye Tian answered. "Here, take it." The Shiwei saint daughter tossed a slim, ink-dark book toward him without ceremony. "It's a second-class, top-tier Yuanli cultivation manual I came across by chance. It's called the Qingyuan Yuanli Secret Technique. It's 4 times more effective than the high-level Yuanli forging body technique." Ye Tian caught the book, eyes widening. "This is that valuable? Why are you giving me a second-class, top-tier Yuanli manual? Isn't this the kind of thing people kill for?" The sunset moon saint daughter shrugged. That mission almost cost people their lives. I don't want to owe you. Besides, I won't lose anything by handing over a bonus manual. Thank you, Ye Tian said, bowing his head briefly. Let's go. The Sunset Moon Saint daughter's voice was soft, and the group left the secret realm together. They returned to the Zhonghai superbase, and once inside the base limits, Ye Tian separated from them and made his way home. Alone, he couldn't help laughing to himself. The haul from this trip was ridiculous, practically a windfall. Pseudo-Upanishads grade speed talent, an elementary time talent, and a second-grade elemental force cultivation secret technique. It felt like he'd stumbled onto a bargain he never expected to find. This really is my lucky day, Ye Tian murmured, eyes bright. He said nothing more and set to work merging the pseudo-Upanishad-level speed talent. A low rumble rolled through him as the fusion began. 10 minutes later, the process finished, and his speed talent updated. Speed talent, pseudo-Upanishads, 10%. A current of Upanishadic power surged into his mind, the Upanishad of speed, and he felt as if he had personally realized it, able to call it forth at will. 60% defensive Upanishad, 10% speed Upanishad. I've got 2 Upanishads active now, he counted to himself, satisfaction in his voice. It was a pity that some of his other pseudo-talent slots hadn't linked in, the pseudo-Upanishad-level Congo bone talent, and the pseudo-mystic power and blood-sucking talents were contributing nothing, effectively 0%. Had they connected, he might have mastered all 5 mysteries. Oh well, he could always copy someone else's pseudo-Upanishad talent later. With that resolved, Ye Tian closed his eyes and began to merge with the time mystery he had dreamed about. Fusion! The power of the time talent poured into Ye Tian's soul and body, and an odd, unbearable sensation flooded him, part pain, part disorientation. Time itself seemed to press and twist at his senses. 10 minutes later, the fusion finished. He staggered and drew a deep, shuddering breath, sweat soaking through his clothes. Did it work? He scrambled to check his status. When he saw the listing for the time gift, a wave of relief washed over him. I don't know exactly what the elementary time talent does, Ye Tian murmured. His consciousness linked to the talent imprint, and the answers came clear and precise. The elementary time talent granted 3 distinct abilities: time perception, time acceleration, and time deceleration. Time perception let him sense how time was passing in a given space. It sounded trivial at first, but it was vital in places where time itself behaved oddly. Without it, you could walk into a zone where time moved far slower than normal, live through what felt like a few days, and then step out to find decades had gone by. Time perception prevented that kind of catastrophic mismatch. Time acceleration allowed him to speed up time in a region, but at this basic level, the limit was 3 times normal. Conversely, time deceleration could slow down an area, again up to a factor of 3. Used in combat, slowing an enemy's local time to 1/3 would effectively make their thoughts, reactions, and movements 3 times slower. The implication hit Ye Tian like a chill. That was devastating. Time acceleration wasn't just a battlefield trick. In combat, it could speed up the flow of time in the area around you by 3-fold. You'd think, move and react 3 times faster than anyone else. But its real value lay elsewhere. Cultivation. If you could accelerate the time around your spirit, your training would progress that much faster. 1 day of cultivation for you could be the equivalent of 3 days for everyone else. On top of that, Ye Tian had just obtained a second-tier, top-grade Yuanli cultivation secret, the Qingyuan Yuanli secret technique, which multiplied the effect by 4. In other words, his cultivation wouldn't merely be 3 times faster. Combined, the effects could skyrocket his progress. Break through the heavens, he breathed, excitement making his heart race. He set about studying the Qingyuan Yuanli secret technique at once. It took him half a day to fully grasp the method. Then he began to cultivate. Time acceleration, he called, activating the 3-fold time field. Almost immediately, he ran into a problem. Maintaining time acceleration consumed his own power. Without the blueprints for a time array to stabilize the field, there was no way to sustain it except by burning his personal energy. In short, without a time array design, he could only rely on his own reserves to open the time talent and gain the 3-fold time, and that came with a costly toll. Cultivation can replenish strength, But even so, it won't give you a threefold increase, Ye Tian muttered, frowning. There was another drawback to activating the triple time acceleration. It would also triple the rate at which his lifespan was consumed. That wasn't a serious concern. Ye Tian's lifespan extended to 800 years, and he was still young. Sacrificing a bit of longevity for speed was acceptable. He began practicing the Qingyuan Yuanli secret technique. After a day of focused training, he checked his progress and felt a surge, only it wasn't as much as he'd calculated. He had hoped for a 12-fold boost, the 3-fold time acceleration multiplied by the 4-fold effect of the second-class top Yuan force technique, but because he had to draw on heaven and earth Yuan Qi to make up for his own energy consumption, the net increase fell to 8-fold. Even so, an 8-fold acceleration was staggering. I used to be able to open 45 acupoints a month, he said to himself with a smile, and now it's 8 times that. Ye Tian laughed. It took him less than a month to reach the ultimate tier of the king level, a rate of progress probably unmatched anywhere in the Zhonghai superbase. Ye Tian had given himself a modest goal, reach the king realm's ultimate stage, then break through the realm entirely. Just over 20 days later, he ended his retreat and deactivated the time acceleration chamber. Physical strength has hit the king level's limit. There's no further increase, he murmured, testing himself. My bodily speed has multiplied as well. With my pseudo-Upanishads level speed talent added in, my velocity now matches the Sunset Moon Saint King's. By his calculations, his offensive power had climbed to 7.2 dragon power. From here, there were only 2 possible ways to raise his attack further and surpass the Tomahawk Emperor's king-level record. Ye Tian narrowed it down to 2 options. The first was to cultivate a gold-level sword technique, far harder. Gold-level sword skills were top secret at the Zhonghai superbase. Even if he could barter with the heavyweights of the scattered Cultivation Alliance, he simply had no bargaining chips. The other option was to copy a pseudo-transcendent level power talent. That was much simpler in principle. Zhonghai superbase had to house a few pseudo-transcendent talents. The Tomahawk Emperor was known to possess one, but the Tomahawk Emperor might not even be at Zhonghai, so copying that particular talent would be a matter of luck. Or I could copy someone else, Ye Tian thought. The top names on the king's list are the most likely to have pseudo-transcendent talents. He spent the next few days quietly tracking the movements of the top-ranked kings. 5 days later, he got the break he was hoping for. Ye Tian, the number 2 on the king's list, had entered the God of War Tower and had been inside for 2 days already. Ye Tian wasted no time. He rushed to the God of War Tower, melted into the crowd, and waited in silence. He figured Ye Tian couldn't stay in the God of War Tower forever. He must have gone to the God of War Monument. Sure enough, on the 4th day, Ye Tian emerged and found Ye Tianshao waiting for him. By then, Ye's duplication talent had come off cooldown, and he activated it. The ability wrapped around Ye Tian and revealed his qualities. Ye Tian, Cultivation talent, Morning Star, Strength talent, Pseudo-Upanishads, 50%, Marksmanship talent, Medium, Defense talent, Pseudo-Upanishads, 20%, Speed talent, Pseudo-Upanishads, 10%. Ye Tianshao let out a low whistle. Ye Tian's cultivation talent wasn't high, only Morning Star, not as strong as the Sunset Moon Saint Daughter's Huyo level, but his other talents were disturbingly good. He had 3 Pseudo-Upanishads level talents, and at the same time solid basic talents in strength, defense, and speed. There was almost no weakness at all, and even his marksmanship was at a respectable medium. If his opponent's marksmanship had been fully developed, it would have been enough to shatter the Tomahawk Emperor's attack record. Unfortunately, the opponent hadn't managed to improve that talent. Ye Tian looked every bit the heir apparent, like the grandson of Qinsek's founder, the scion of a former High Emperor, and his innate gifts were extraordinary. That made him second on today's roster of kings. But there was a fatal limitation. His Morning Star talent could not be upgraded. It seemed that not even the Zhonghai superbase could raise a cultivation talent beyond Morning Star level. Ye Tian let out a quiet sigh. At least he had one advantage no other genius enjoyed, the ability to copy talents. Any talent could be duplicated, cultivation gifts included. Copy the Pseudo-Upanishad talent, and the defensive talent, he decided. He copied Ye Tian's 2 talents in quick succession, then left the God of War Tower and returned home. Once there, he set about fusing the pseudo-Upanishad-level power talents he now possessed. He watched the fusion with growing anticipation. The energies coiled, aligned, and then, slowly, surely, merged. Before long, the process was complete. Strength pseudo-Upanishad. Ye Tian tested it. When he activated 50% of the pseudo-Upanishads, a pseudo-mystical level power, his strength multiplied 40-fold. The change was immediate and brutal. His muscles bulged, his heartbeat hammered in his throat, and the air around him seemed to shiver. One punch sent the training post flying and cracked the stone floor where it landed. He looked at his hand. Equal par. Astonished and wary, this ability was terrifyingly potent. Chapter 147. Ye Tian ran the numbers on his strongest possible strike. His base physical strength registered at 10,000 Vientian. After the Yuan Force boost, it rose to 20,000 Vientian. The 50% pseudo-Upanishad strength talent multiplied that by 40, and the Heavenly Pole Chopper added another 12-fold increase. The final tally came out to 9.6 million force, the equivalent of 9.6 dragon power. Broken, Ye Tian couldn't contain his excitement. He had just eclipsed the strongest attack record left by the Tomahawk Emperor at the king level. If he went to the God of War Tower to test it, he'd earn reward points. And if he could replicate the pseudo-Upanishad's defensive talent as well, he might even shatter the defense record. He wasted no time. Ye Tian started fusing the 2% fragment of the pseudo-Upanishad's defensive talent he had copied from Ye Tian. A low rumble signaled the process. Replication initiated. 10 minutes later, the fusion completed. Ye Tian felt the alteration immediately. His defensive talent had shifted once more. Defense talent, pseudo-Upanishads. The defensive talent had just advanced. From the previous 60% pseudo-esoteric tier, the earlier record had been recorded incorrectly and was revised up to 70% pseudo-mystic. The increase in defensive power was dramatic. When Ye Tian tested it, his defense multiplied by 60 times. His raw physical defense alone could now withstand the force of 1.2 million elephants, roughly the equivalent of 1.2 dragons, without suffering serious injury. With his pseudo-mystic level diamond bone talent layered on, that resistance should rise to the equivalent of about 1.8 dragons. He examined the numbers and frowned. The upgrade was significant, but the pseudo-defensive tier still felt a little short of what he wanted. Better to push the limit and break the strongest attack record to earn more points. So he decided to return to the God of War Tower and attempt the 6th floor again. Let's start with the 6th floor, he said to himself. His soul slipped back into the 6th level of the tower. The black-clad warrior, who had once looked impossibly swift, now seemed sluggish in comparison. Die! Ye Tian only had to form a blade, a single slash, and his opponent was cut down. He'd cleared the 6th floor. News raced out from the Tower of the God of War. Ye Tian had broken through the 6th layer. His position on the leaderboard soared. He shot up to 33rd place. There had been 32 people who'd already reached the 6th floor. Now Ye Tian joined them as number 33. Gods, Ye Tian broke the 6th floor and jumped to 33rd. Unbelievable. What talent. He must have opened a lot of acupoints at once. Every time he opens a new point, his power jumps. This time it must have been a huge leap. No wonder he broke the 6th layer. Wasn't he only just at king level when he last challenged the tower? If that's true, he's a monster. Do you think he can get through the 7th floor? Someone asked. There are only 6 geniuses from Zhonghai Grand Base who've reached the 7th layer. Maybe he can be the 7th. 7th floor? Are you kidding? Absolutely impossible. As the onlookers argued and debated, Ye Tian reached the 7th level. There he faced a black-clad warrior whose speed rivaled his own, but whose strength was far below Ye Tian's. Ye Tian's offensive power had already surpassed the Tomahawk Emperor's record. Who could possibly match him? It wasn't long before the black-clad warrior fell. Ye Tian shattered the 7th level and earned 64 points. Now he stood at a crossroads. Should he push on to the 8th level? With his space and time talents, he was confident he could break through. It would not be difficult. but doing so would inevitably trigger a huge uproar throughout the Zhonghai superbase. Forget it. It's still a bit premature. If I had some big backing, I could push into the 8th layer, but for now, there's no point. I'm not desperate for the God of War monument. I just want to study the sword. Intent. Besides, I don't even have a gold-level sword technique yet, so there's no reason to force my sword intent to perfection. With that, Ye Tian decided to postpone any attempt at the 8th layer. He exited the virtual realm and checked his account of points. To his surprise, the total read 198. Huh? I should have had 98 points after clearing the 5th and 6th layers. How did it jump to 198? Curious, he called for the spirit of his instrument. Jiling, why do I have 198 points? Jiling answered plainly. The God of War Tower detected that your attack power surpassed the previous highest record. It automatically recorded the new strong attack record and awarded you 100 points. Oh, of course. Ye Tian's expression cleared as he understood. He clicked on the record for the strongest attack and saw his name there. He was the new record holder. King-level strongest attack record, 9.6 dragon power. Creator. Ye Tian felt a quiet satisfaction as he studied the record. His recent breakthrough to the 7th layer, however, had set the 7th spot on the king's list ablaze. Word of his battle record spread like wildfire, and every major power wanted him. Some tried to recruit him with offers, others to bully or coerce him into joining their ranks. At that moment, the emperors of the scattered Cultivation Alliance stepped in and stopped the scramble. It made sense. The alliance already harbored another 7-star, king-level prodigy whose cultivation was accelerating rapidly, perhaps even of Huiyue-level talent, while the alliance's top 7-star king was only at the Morning Star stage and could hardly make the leap to the emperor level. Bringing Ye Tian into the alliance would greatly expand their influence and give them a decisive voice in future affairs. For that reason, the emperors forbade any parties from making moves against him. The scattered Cultivation Alliance wanted to bring Ye Tian firmly into their fold, and they certainly weren't going to let any other faction take him away. At the Luna sect, the Saintess of the Sunset Moon was idly toying with her treasured time-space silver rat when a breathless maid burst in. "Saintess, something urgent has happened." "What is it?" the Saintess asked, setting the little silver creature down. The maid pressed a scrap of intelligence into her hands. As the Saintess read, her expression emptied in astonishment. "This can't be right," she muttered. "We only met Ye Tian a month ago. He was nowhere near my level then. How could he suddenly be 7-star king level? I've only just reached 6-star king. Could he be hiding his true strength?" the maid offered hesitantly. "Maybe he allowed the time-space silver rat to wound him deliberately so he'd appear weak and win your sympathy." The Saintess frowned, weighing the possibility. The idea nagged at her. If Ye Tian had indeed masked his power, there were far greater implications than anyone suspected. She forced a small smile. "We haven't lost anything. Besides, even if all we have is a second-tier, top-level Yuanli secret technique, couldn't we still call on a 7-star king to deal with it? And anyway, it's for someone else." The maid waved her hand. "A 7-star genius? You don't see them using second-tier secrets. They all possess first-tier, top-level Yuanli techniques." The Sunset Moon Saintess shook her head. "Yes, but Ye Tian is a true 7-star king. Even if he only just reached that level, we won't be at a disadvantage. And even if we gain his favor by that alone, befriending such a prodigy can only help us. So stop complaining." "Holy Virgin, I understand," the maid said, and bowed. What the maid did not notice, however, was the envy lurking beneath the Saintess's composed face. 7-star, that title burned with a bitter edge. Even the Lunar God sect had never managed to elevate her to 7-star. Getting her to 6-star had already drained vast resources. To see someone like Ye Tian reach that rank so naturally filled her with quiet, unspoken resentment. She owned a space-time sill, Ver-Rat, and hadn't expected it to be such a formidable beast. It possessed the twin supreme talents of time and space. If she trained it properly, it would become her greatest asset. Thinking that, the Sunset Moon Saintess felt no envy toward Ye Tian. Had she known Ye Tian also possessed those same twin supreme talents, she would have been even more jealous. Chapter 148, Zhonghai Superbase, at one of the tower gates. Wang Yan stared at the incoming report and felt the world tilt. This was the second time she'd received intelligence about Ye Tian, and each update was more shocking than the last. Not long ago, he'd suddenly appeared in the king's ranking at 62nd place. She'd assumed it was simply extraordinary talent. Now the file said he possessed 7-star king-level combat strength. She refused to believe it at first, but after making multiple verifications, the data proved authentic. 7-star king, that kind of qualification would suit him perfectly. Keeping it to myself would be pointless, she murmured. Ye Tian was an outsider here with no patrons or backing inside Zhonghai Superbase. He couldn't possibly win that kind of opportunity on his own. If someone were to give it to him, it would be an enormous favor. When he comes out of the God of War Tower, I'll find him. Her eyes hardened. The decision was made. The God of War Tower. Ye Tian broke through the 7th layer. The spirit's voice rang out suddenly. Ye Tian, you've reached the 7th layer, it said. Anyone who passes the 6th layer of the God of War Tower can qualify as an official, full member, and gain privileges ordinary king levels do not have. Full member? Ye Tian asked, curious. What privileges are those? Ji Ling replied, because the God of War Tower suffered a major malfunction, many of its functions were lost. Right now there are only 2 remaining privileges, the God of War Ring and membership points. The God of War Ring is a special artifact that lets you enter a virtual combat world repeatedly to train. It even analyzes your attack, speed, defense, and other combat stats. You can use the ring as long as you're within 1 million kilometers of the tower. Membership points are another member benefit. You can claim 1 point each month, and they accumulate. Ye Tian was surprised. All that? He said, incredulous. The God of War ring was invaluable. It let Ye Tian jump into the virtual arena at any time to fight, and it could read attack power and other combat stats. Utterly convenient. On top of that, it granted 1 point each month. That didn't sound like much, but 12 points a year was enough to take part in the 12-day event held before the God of War Monument, a bonus reward anyone would want. The ring's spirit also revealed something else. The God of War Tower had been mutilated. Though it looked intact at first glance, it had been damaged. If the tower were whole, its power would be far greater. Ye Tian couldn't help imagining how much better the benefits for full members might be with an undamaged tower. Still, it was better to be grateful than greedy. Instrument spirit, I want to enter the space of the God of War monument, he said. After teleporting into the monument's inner space, Ye Tian focused on comprehending sword intent. Time slipped by without him noticing. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Now the day had come. Ye Tian opened his eyes and sighed. Progress was getting harder. A month ago, his understanding of sword intent had been climbing steadily. He'd reached about 70%, but now it had stalled. The advances came in fits and starts, only a few percent at a time. Unless he poured all his cultivation points into it, he might barely scrape up to 80%. He abandoned meditation. He couldn't afford to waste time here. He still needed to copy 2 solid talents and, just as importantly, find a gold-rank sword technique. Without that, his high-rank sword intent would be wasted. Leaving the God of War Tower, Ye Tian headed home. As he walked, he kept using his copying talent to scan the people he passed, looking for anyone with an exceptional aptitude, but he didn't find anything worth taking. Back at the villa, he was getting ready to cook something nice when someone knocked and called out. "It's you!" Ye Tian opened the door and found Wang Yan standing on the steps. He was surprised. Wang Yan smiled and said, "Won't you invite me in and have a seat?" "Of course, please, come in." Ye Tian stepped aside and hurried them inside. Wang Yan felt especially grateful to Ye Tian. He had taught her the turtle breathing technique, which saved her a lot of trouble early on, and he'd given her a basic introduction to the Zhonghai Superbase. It wasn't much, but it helped her get up to speed quickly, human nature after all. "You surprised me," Wang Yan said with a smile. "In such a short time, you've reached 7-star king level. When I first heard it, I thought it was fake news." Ye Tian shrugged modestly. "I've only improved a little." "Not a little, a huge leap," Wang Yan cut in, covering her mouth as she laughed. Her tone wasn't awed, though, She didn't seem to be putting too much stock in the title. If she were facing an ordinary king-level opponent, she probably would have been shaking already. This was different. "Do you know why there are so many kings on the king rankings?" she asked. "A lot of those king-level fighters have pushed all the way to the pinnacle of the realm, and many of them are Morningstar cultivation talents. Morningstar cultivators, especially those with a perfected foundation, should be able to reach the saint level easily. Yet they always get stuck at the king realm. Do you know why?" Wang Yan asked abruptly. Ye Tian was quiet for a few seconds, then shook his head. "I don't." He'd thought about it before, but only briefly. Now that he considered it more carefully, the problem suddenly felt much bigger. Take the Sunset Moon Saintess, for example. She's long been famous as a Huiyue-level prodigy. Reaching the saint level should be trivial for her. Breaking that bottleneck and advancing to the next tier ought to be straightforward. Yet she has always remained at the king realm, which is puzzling. "There are a few reasons," Wang Yan went on. "One is the limitation of innate talents. Even a genius with a perfect foundation finds it hard to alter their talent makeup once they enter the saint level. Treasures and relics can enhance existing talents, but they can't create the kinds of innate attributes a cultivator was never born with. For instance, someone who lacks speed-type talent can't simply fix that shortage with a treasure, and without that talent, they can't overcome the next bottleneck. Truly outstanding geniuses try to make up for their weak points before reaching the holy level, striving to develop all three basic aptitudes. The problem is that items which increase aptitude are extraordinarily rare, and most of those that do exist only raise primary or lesser talents, the kinds of talents many geniuses already possess in abundance. The other major obstacle is the mysteries. You may have some understanding of them, but how deep that understanding goes is another question. Even when someone appears to have a mysteries-type aptitude, it is often only a pseudo-mystery level talent, and it's very hard to progress from that to a genuine mystery. A true mystery lets you manipulate the laws themselves. Such aptitudes are sometimes called law mysteries, and their power far outstrips that of the pseudo-mysteries. Rumor has it that when a king-level cultivator breaks through to the holy level, their soul undergoes a metamorphosis, and their enlightenment multiplies many times over. If you can cultivate a pseudo-mystery aptitude up to roughly 70%, you may be able to use the moment of breakthrough to convert it into a true mystery-level talent. That's why true geniuses do everything they can to push those pseudo-esoteric talents up to the 70% realm. That Wang Yan explained, which is also why they themselves have usually stayed at the king level. A cold realization hit Ye Tian. That explanation might be common knowledge among the top brass at Zhonghai Superbase, or a few leading geniuses, but it had never been made public. Ordinary king-level people didn't know, and since he had no connections, no one had ever told him. "Sister Wang, why are you telling me this?" he asked. Wang Yan smiled. "Ye Tian, when I first saw you, I assumed you'd been taken as an apprentice by some ancient master. That's the sort of explanation that would make sense. But the more I thought about it, the less it fit. You lack a lot of the basic knowledge a pupil would have. A real master would have taught you those things. And the fact that you climbed to the top of the king lists so quickly convinced me even more that you weren't apprenticed. Your talent is far too great. If someone powerful had been guiding you, they would have pushed you straight into the holy level and never let you go when you first reached the king level. The early king stage is dangerous without proper guidance. It's easy to go astray. If you don't know what you're doing, you could rush into the holy level too soon and miss the chance to develop Upanishad's talent. You don't have any connections or resources, and opportunities are scarce. I can invest in you. There's a big opportunity right now that I think you need. Will you give me the chance to back you?" "Invest?" Ye Tian stared at Wang Yan in surprise. He hadn't expected her to propose something like that. She had guessed him correctly. He'd never been accepted as an apprentice by some ancient master, and he had no powerful backing. His only real advantage was his raw talent, and in this age talent mattered more than lineage or inheritance. But talent alone wasn't enough. Luck, knowledge, and proper guidance were all still necessary. If he hadn't first absorbed the Hurricane King's cultivation experience, he wouldn't have been able to forge such a solid foundation. Maybe he could imitate someone else's pseudo-esoteric talent, but without that perfect base, it would be nearly impossible to break the 100-fold ceiling. Copying talent wasn't a cure-all. It didn't help overcome that limit. Only a genius with a flawless foundation could. Opportunities like that were worth fighting for. Sister Wang, exactly what do you mean by invest in me? He asked plainly. I've got a ticket to one of those ruins, something like the Tower of the God of War, Wang Yan said. But I know I'm not strong enough. If I go in, I won't just fail to get anything valuable. There's a very real chance I'll die. Plenty of prodigies have begged me for the spot, but I refused. I want to give it to you instead. The only condition is that you bring out a relic that can temper spiritual power. A relic? Ye Tian blinked. What exactly do you mean by relics of an ancient civilization? Wang Yan wasn't surprised that Ye Tian didn't know. Even inside the Zhonghai superbase, only the core disciples of the top powers were familiar with that secret. The Tower of the God of War is one of those relics, he explained. When we say relics of an ancient civilization, we mean artifacts or structures left behind by a civilization from long, long ago, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, or even older. There were other civilizations before human civilization. Ye Tian's voice betrayed his shock. Ye Tian had been wondering how such a world-changing relic as the Tower of the God of War could have come into being, and now he was beginning to understand. The tower, it turned out, was not a recent creation, but a relic from a long-dead civilization. Whatever culture had built it must once have been extraordinarily advanced and powerful. What happened to those ancient civilizations? Ye Tian asked. Who knows? Wang Yan shrugged. Maybe they were wiped out. Maybe they left Earth. I don't have the answer. Ye Tian let it drop. Wang Yan went on. That relic is basically a shrine. There's a pocket of space inside the temple filled with treasures, items that amplify talent, artifacts that condense spiritual power and refine it into divine consciousness. Zhonghai Superbase produces so many exceptional people because of those treasures. Without them, the base's talent level would be 1 or 2 grades lower. Anything in there for blades? Ye Tian asked casually. At first I thought there weren't any, Wang Yan said, but the Zhonghai Superbase does have things. Yuanli's secret tomes, sword techniques, gun skills, and so on. Very few of them are original inventions by living warriors. Most were salvaged from the ruins. There are sword techniques in that temple, even gold-tier ones, but they're extremely hard to obtain. Gold-tier sword techniques? Ye Tianzhen's pulse quickened. If he could get his hands on a gold-tier sword skill, his strength would jump dramatically. Are you really willing to give me access to that place? Ye Tianzhen didn't know how many entry points the temple had, but whatever they were, each one had to be incredibly valuable. Of course, Wang Yan said. I believe in your ability. This will be an even trade. I'm not asking you to abandon the Scattered Cultivation Alliance's principles. I'll give you a quota to enter the temple. If you can bring back a spirit-condensing treasure from inside, give me a copy of it. That's the deal. I wasn't a saint-level cultivator, only an extraordinary level one. Relying on raw talent to refine my spirit was possible, but unbearably slow. To reach the saint level, I had to refine my spirit into a divine consciousness, and that almost always required an external artifact to accelerate the process. Given my talent, using such an artifact would give me a solid chance, maybe 50 to 60%, but the artifacts themselves were unbelievably rare. Even as a saint-level heir of the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall, I couldn't simply buy one. They had to be recovered from ruins. Ye Tian agreed. Why wouldn't he? It was a deal that benefited both sides. Afterward, Ye Tian pressed Wang Yan for more information about the temple ruins. What caught his attention was that the chance to enter the ruins wasn't limited to the Zhonghai Superbase. Other superbases had quotas too. One of them was the Changhe base, built along the banks of the Yangtze River. That was where the name came from. The Changhe warriors had a brutal daily routine. They spent their lives fighting the ferocious beasts that swarmed the river, and the base sat near 2 5-star spatial rifts. Although Changhe's population was relatively small, only about 20 million, roughly 10 million fewer than Zhonghai, their combat effectiveness was exceptional. Constant exposure to life-or-death battles had honed them into far tougher fighters, while many at Zhonghai had grown a little too comfortable. Wang Yan gave Ye Tian a warning before he left. "Be careful around the other warriors when you enter the temple space," he said. "Everyone goes in for treasure. Even people who know you might turn on you for it, let alone strangers." Ye Tian only nodded. He understood perfectly. Human nature tended towards selfishness and greed. In these times, there were too few truly noble warriors to matter. The strong survive and the weak are eliminated. That was the law of this era. Even facing Wang Yan, Ye Tian couldn't afford to let his guard down completely. A thread of suspicion still ran through him. When Wang Yan left, he gave Ye Tian a token, one of the keys to enter the temple ruins. There were 365 keys in total, and the Zhonghai superbase had been allotted only 108 of them. Zhonghai was home to countless top forces, but so few keys were distributed among them that each faction received only a handful. That made each quota extraordinarily precious. Even if Ye Tian switched to another top force, it would be impossible for him to secure an additional entry quota. Without Wang Yan's investment, he wouldn't have gotten this key at all. 10 years had passed, with only 2 months left. Wang Yan still hadn't said a word. Ye Tian suspected the real reason so many powerful figures remained stuck at the king level was simple. They were waiting for the opportunity the temple ruins might bring. Wang Yan's warning stuck with him. He wouldn't reach the holy level overnight. He certainly had the potential to force it, but breaking through the holy level raised one's comprehension in a way nothing else did, and that made a real difference. Ye Tian could copy other people's talents, but true Upanishad-level abilities were so rare he hadn't even seen one yet. Not even Qianyu, the 8th-ranked water on the sacred list, possessed an Upanishad-level talent. His defensive talent had already advanced to about 70% of the pseudo-Upanishad level, and once he broke into the holy level, he could start referencing genuine Upanishad techniques. Even if there existed a single talent capable of reaching the Upanishad tier, he preferred to collect more of them. So the next goal, Ye Tian decided, is to copy a pseudo-Upanishad level talent and raise my version to 70% of the pseudo-Upanishad realm. He set that as his next small, concrete objective. Chapter 150. For 2 months, Ye Tian made no progress in cultivation. He had already reached the ultimate king tier and found himself unable to break into the holy realm. Since he couldn't advance his cultivation at the moment, he turned his attention to other areas of improvement, honing his blade intent or acquiring new talents. Over the next 2 days, he visited the major branches of the Scattered Cultivation Alliance and the Tomahawk Mercenary Halls, searching for a suitable talent to copy. Finally, he found one. In the Tomahawk Hall of the Three Mountain region sat a peculiar figure, a warrior of 60 or 70 years, with monkey-like cheeks and a single blood-red eye set in the center of his brow. He was a three-eyed man, an odd appearance that drew attention even though his cultivation was only at the master level. What caught Ye Tian's interest, however, was the man's talent profile. Name, Gu Tong. The three-eyed man. Cultivation talent, extraordinary. Speed talent, beginner. Disguise, camouflage talent, advanced. Gu Tong's cultivation talent was modest, but his disguise talent was advanced, exactly the kind of ability Ye Tian wanted to study. This person has extraordinary talent. It's impossible to look 60 or 70 without reaching master level, so he can't actually be that old. Could he be using a disguise talent to appear elderly? Ye Tian stared in disbelief. From skin to eyes to the faint thread of life aura, the man before him truly looked like an old man. There were no obvious giveaways. If not for his talent-copying ability, revealing the person's true nature, Ye Tian never would have suspected he was actually young. The idea unsettled him and excited him at once. A disguise talent like that was incredibly useful. In 2 months, he would be entering the temple. Maybe he could learn a similar ability and use it to take on another identity. If he offended anyone inside, they wouldn't know who he really was. He quietly copied Gu Tong's disguise talent. After that, Ye Tian visited several places and pressed as close as he could to the headquarters of the major powers, but he couldn't get inside their compounds, and his copying ability had a limited range, so he was unable to copy the talents of those factions' core members. In the end, Ye Tian didn't want to waste time, so he casually copied a top-tier shadow talent. He already had a junior shadow ability, so acquiring a peak level one was a welcome upgrade. Back at home, he fused the new shadow trait with his high camouflage talent. Once he accessed the camouflage imprint, Ye Tian realized the talent was far more powerful than he'd expected. It didn't just change faces or human appearances, it could disguise him as other creatures. It can even turn me into a ferocious beast, he thought, astonished. There were limits. The high camouflage couldn't become any random monster, only humanoid-type beasts, creatures with a roughly human form, like certain monkey-like fiends. The talent could also convincingly transform him into a woman. The disguise included voice, which could be perfectly replicated. The idea of posing as a woman made Ye Tian feel uncomfortable, and he quickly dismissed it. Then he set off for the God of War Tower. Ye Tian had decided to fully commit to retreating and cultivating the sword meaning. The points he had accumulated were useless sitting idle, so he resolved to spend them all on enlightening his sword intent. If he could raise his sword intention realm now, it might prove invaluable later, especially if he happened to obtain a gold-tier sword technique from the temple space or the God of War monument space. He sank into uninterrupted study. Day by day, his grasp of the sword intent deepened, and his realm steadily advanced. 70%, 76%, 78%. The numbers climbed, slow but constant. Nearly 2 months passed before he realized how much time had gone by. During that period, he had left the monument only once, accompanying a saint-level cultivator who was departing the God of War monument space. When they ched the exit, Ye Tian took advantage of the opportunity and copied a sliver of the other cultivator's pseudo-Upanishad's talents, 2% to the power talent, which bumped his own pseudo-Upanishad's power talent up to 60%, and 10% to the speed talent, raising his speed talent to 20%. It was a significant gain. After that brief excursion, he returned to the God of War monument space and resumed his retreat, immersing himself once more in the sword meaning. Whoa! Ye Tian opened his eyes and smiled with satisfaction. Success! 80% blade intent. A shadow crossed his face, half amused and half guilty. He had cheated. Secretly, he had activated his time acceleration talent, but only for himself. No one else could tell he was speeding up. With time moving 3 times faster for him, a short period here felt like 6 months of cultivation. That surge of insight pushed his blade intent to 80%. It was a dirty trick, but one only he could pull off. No one else had his talent. Of course, keeping time accelerated cost him. He had burned through a lot of Yuanqi stones to sustain the effect, but to Ye Tian it was worth every one. The God of War Tower didn't appear to be omniscient. If it had noticed the acceleration, it would surely have stopped him. Apparently, it hadn't. Now that he had reached 80% blade intent and the ancient civilization relics temple was about to open, there was nothing left for him to do here. Time to go. Ye Tian left the God of War monument chamber and returned home. He was surprised to find that Little Blood had finally awakened. Ye Tian reached out and stroked the creature's head. Little Blood, you're awake at last. You've been asleep for months. Master, there's something extra in my head, Little Blood said excitedly. What is it? Ye Tian asked, feeling a flicker of nervousness. This was his companion beast, after all, and anything unusual made him uneasy. Little Blood's eyes brightened. It looks like a lineage imprint. I had a trace of one when I was born, but that was simple. Now I'm seeing cultivation techniques, and even some ancient scriptures, the Upanishads. Ye Tian's eyes widened. Then comprehension hit him. This was the War Blood Heavenly Dragon clan's inheritance, a lineage that awakens in stages, so a War Blood Heavenly Dragon can cultivate steadily, step by step. The clan's secrecy was absolute. The inheritance revealed itself only inwardly. Even Little Blood could be enlightened by it, but couldn't speak or teach it aloud, much like an oath. With no better option, Ye Tian resigned himself to letting Xiao Blood train. After all, Xiao Blood had just comprehended the Upanishads. Whatever breakthroughs he made, Ye Tian could simply copy. He wasn't jealous, not in the slightest. You'll be my walking treasure trove from now on, Ye Tian thought, a grin tugging at his lips. Little Blood had no idea his shameless master was already picturing him as a portable repository of talents. Otherwise, he probably would have protested. "Xiao Blood, I'm going away for a while," Ye Tian said aloud. "You'll stay in my advanced cultivation chamber and train hard. You're still too weak. Your master and I could kill you with a flick of a finger right now." He ruffled Xiao Blood playfully. "Humph, master, when you come back, you'll see. I'll be stronger than you." Xiao Blood protested, indignant. Fresh from receiving the Dragon Clan's potent inheritance, he was full of pride and confidence. What Xiao Blood didn't know was that, no matter how powerful he became, he still stood no chance against Ye Tian. Ye Tian could duplicate every one of his talents. Chapter 151. The Changling River was alive with power that day. One renowned king-level warrior after another arrived, each exuding an aura far beyond ordinary king-class fighters. Any king-level beast that came near was cut down in an instant. Before long, over 100 kings had gathered along the riverbank, and more were still arriving. Ye Tian drifted down from the sky and landed at the river's edge. His gaze swept over the crowd of king-level warriors. "Ye Tian, you came too?" A soft voice called out. He turned and saw a familiar face, the Sunset Moon's Saintess, approaching. Ye Tian nodded. He noticed, as she neared, that many eyes in the crowd had hardened with hostility. The Saintess had her admirers here, and some of them looked at Ye Tian with thinly veiled dislike. He paid them no mind. To him they were just small fry and sycophants, not worth his attention. "I didn't expect it," the Sunset Moon Saintess said, curiosity in her voice. "You only just arrived at the Zhonghai Super Base, and you've already managed to get a temple key." "Someone gave it," Ye Tian said casually. The Holy Lady of the Sunset Moon nodded as if she understood. She assumed the gift had come from an emperor of the scattered Cultivation Alliance. After all, the alliance had its allotted shares. Ye Tian noticed her misunderstanding, but didn't correct her. "How much do you know about the temple ruins?" he asked. "Not much," she replied. "This is my first time here. The ancestors of the Luna sect visited before and told me a little." She explained that the temple complex was vast, made up of many separate buildings, each concealing treasures inside. From each building, only one treasure can be taken. Once that treasure is removed, the building seals and cannot be entered again, which is why most of the riches remain untouched. Obtaining those treasures is also extremely difficult. Most of the buildings are protected by guardians. Guardians? When Ye Tian first heard the word, Wang Yan hadn't mentioned it to him. Maybe she didn't even know herself. Her standing in the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall was low. Any quota she had probably owed more to her father than to her own merits, and she certainly wasn't strong enough to enter the temple space. Naturally, she would know very little about the shrine space. "Yes, the Guardians," the Sunset Moon Saintess said. "They're like golden-armored deities. They look human, but they're actually puppets, incredibly lifelike puppets. Only by defeating the Guardians can someone enter those buildings and claim the treasures inside." "Thank you, Saintess," Ye Tian said gratefully. "Don't mention it. You'll see for yourself once you go in," she replied with a faint smile. Ye Tian and the Sunset Moon Saintess exchanged only a few words more, while Replica Talent continued to watch the other martial artists intently. There were plenty of Morningstar cultivation talents, and even a few brilliant moon-grade ones, Ye Tian thought, but he paid them little mind. As in Shi Sun-grade talent himself, his attention was fixed on the rarer king-level gifts. As time passed, more kings arrived, and they essentially fell into two camps, the Zhonghai Superbase and the Changzhou Superbase. In the Yangtze River Superbase, there were witches and three-eyed people, and another distinct race as well, the Sea People. On the surface, Sea Terrans look much like ordinary Terrans, but if they lift their clothes, you can see unusual scales covering their bodies, and their respiratory structure differs noticeably from that of normal humans. The Sea People had once been human. Centuries ago, they had been forced into a hidden sea realm, and, over long years beneath the waves, slowly evolved into their current forms. Then, just over 100 years ago, disaster struck. Hordes of ferocious beasts swarmed the oceans, overrunning the Sea People's secret domain. The survivors fled along the Yangtze River and eventually took refuge at the Yangtze Superbase. Ye Tian noticed something obvious about them. Nearly all of the Sea People displayed water system aptitude. In the water, their strength far outclassed other king-level fighters. Their affinity for aquatic combat was unmistakable. Another half-hour passed, and the king-level representatives from both superbases had essentially all arrived. Ye Tian scanned the new arrivals and muttered in disappointment, not a single Upanishad-level talent. It dawned on him how rare the Upanishad-level gifted truly were. Even with the help of artifacts like the God of War Heavenly Monument, reaching Upanishad rank was extraordinarily difficult. Still, two talents among the crowd caught his attention. A defensive talent that was essentially a 50% pseudo-Upanishad, and a power talent that measured about a 60% pseudo-Upanishad. They weren't full Upanishads, but they were promising enough to be worth watching. 60% of the pseudo-Upanishad level strength talent came from Wind and Blood Massacre, the name at the top of the Zhonghai Superbase Kings list. 50% of the pseudo-Upanishad level defensive talent belonged to a witch called Tiger at the Chang'e Superbase. If Ye Tian could copy Tiger's 50% defensive talent, his own pseudo-Upanishad defensive ability should immediately elevate into a full Upanishad-level defense. And if he could also take the Wind and Blood Massacre's 60% strength talent, his pseudo-Upanishad strength might likewise transform directly into true Upanishad-level power. The possibility thrilled him, but there was a painful snag. His copying ability was still on cooldown for 2 days. He couldn't take them now. If only I'd waited, he told himself, stung by regret. Wishing was pointless, though. All he could do was wait for the temple space meeting and try to copy their talents then, quietly and quickly. "It's almost time," a king suddenly announced. The other kings nodded in agreement. Sure enough, within 10 minutes a shaft of light burst up from the bottom of the Changling River, punched through the surface, and arced into the sky. The ruined temple was coming to life. Spatial fluctuations. Ye Tian felt a surge of spatial disturbance wash over him. He remembered what Wang Yan had told him. The temple ruins lie at the riverbed, but they only appear once every 10 years. At other times, they cannot be found at all. Even the emperor had once dived to the river bottom and failed to locate the ruins. Now it made sense. The ruins were concealed within a spatial interlayer, a pocket of space. Unless they could tear open that space and reach the layer where the ruins sat, they would never find them. "Let's go down!" One of the king-ranked leaders dove into the Changling River first. Then the real fight began beneath the waves. The Changling River was a paradise for ferocious beasts. I had no idea how many king-level creatures prowled below its surface, and every so often even saint-level beasts would appear. Without sufficient strength, you might not even make it to the gate of the temple ruins alive. Ye Tian had crossed the Changling River once before. Back then, he'd rushed through alone, afraid of running into anything powerful. He moved at top speed, keeping to the quickest, safest path and staying constantly on guard. But that was then. His power had grown many times over since, and the river was nothing to him now. Even an ordinary saint-level beast could be cut down by a single swing of his sword. To give some scale, a 5-star king-level fighter could hold their own against an ordinary saint. Ye Tian, however, was far beyond that. His true fighting strength wasn't merely at the 7-star king level, it was at the 8-star level, and in many ways exceeded the typical 8-star king. So, when the Changling River surged with beasts, they came in wave after wave and were slaughtered by Ye Tian's blade. Even king beasts of exceptional talent fell before him. Before long, he reached the bed of the Changling River. Would you like me to continue and revise more of the chapter? Chapter 152. At the bottom of the Changling River, Ye Tian and a group of king-rank warriors stood on the plaza before a colossal temple. The structure dominated the surroundings, spreading out over roughly a 10-mile radius. Weathered by time, it still radiated an almost unimaginable majesty, as if it could swallow the sun, moon, and stars. A thin veil of light wrapped the entire temple. It looked fragile to the eye, but not even saint-rank or emperor-rank cultivators could force their way through it. Only those of king rank and below were allowed to enter the divine temple. Otherwise, the chance to explore the divine shrine ruins would have been seized by the more powerful saint and emperor-level forces. One by one, the king-rank warriors approached, used their temple keys, and stepped through the light as if it were nothing. Hundreds filed into the main hall. Despite their number, the chamber felt far from crowded. The space was simply immense. At the center of the hall floated a gate of light. The light gate was the direct and only passage to the temple's inner space. All around it, the walls were thick and unbroken. There were no other exits. A famed king-level cultivator stepped through without hesitation, and Ye Tian rushed in after him. The familiar pulse of teleportation wrapped around Ye Tian, and he was sent spinning into another stretch of heaven and earth. Relief flooded him the moment he tested himself. "My copying talent isn't being suppressed," he breathed. Back in the temple hall, his ability had been stifled. That had left him unsettled. Now, freed from the oppressive influence, he could copy again. He let out a small laugh. The light gate, he realized, was not merely a doorway within the temple, but a teleportation array linking to some distant realm. The temple itself might be larger than the single accessible hall implied, but most of it was sealed off. Only this gate led to that far-off space. If that was true, it would also explain why Ye Tian's replication talent hadn't been suppressed here. "The temple ruins are too strange. Don't waste time theorizing. Find a building," he told himself. Ye Tian soared, scanning the area. He had no idea where the other kings had landed. Everyone had been teleported to different locations. Though there were supposed to be hundreds of king-level practitioners in this place, the ground around him was empty, no one in sight, proof of how vast this space was. He picked a direction at random and flew, constantly probing the landscape as he went. In less than half an hour, a structure finally came into view. He streaked toward it and came to a stop before a courtyard that looked like the compound of a powerful man. The entire yard was shrouded in a formation. "Top-tier formation talent, activate," he called. In an instant, the great formation bloomed into a formation world before Ye Tian's eyes, layer upon layer of arrayed space folding over itself, endlessly complex and horribly intricate. "What a terrifying array," Ye Tian breathed, astonished. He could still sense the formation space, and perhaps there was another layer that even the top formation experts couldn't perceive. This formation was beyond the scope of ordinary top arrays. Breaking it would be impossible, Ye Tian murmured and abandoned the idea. He walked toward the courtyard gate. As he drew near, a figure in gold armor, spear in hand, materialized and blocked his path. "Any who trespass on the master's estate, die!" the warrior intoned coldly. At once, Ye Tian remembered the holy daughter of the sunset moon's warning. This was a guardian. Instinctively, he focused his copy talent on the man to probe his power, and, to his shock, he could actually see the guardian's talent. Type: Golden Armor Corpse Golem Cultivation Talent, Extraordinary Defense Talent, Advanced Strength. Talent: Medium Marksmanship Talent, Medium. Golden Armor Corpse Golem. It's hard to believe someone managed to refine a dead king-level puppet. My replication talent can even copy corpse-type abilities, as long as the corpse is intact. Ye Tian reread the description and felt his body tighten. The force behind the temple ruins was no minor power in the age of the ancient civilization. If this relic space truly contained numerous golden armor corpse golems, then it meant they had used a tremendous number of corpses to fashion those puppets. Using corpses to refine guardian puppets fit the style of that faction. Whatever had happened since, they had clearly treated this space as a place of inheritance, a trial ground where disciples could gain experience and be tested. Perhaps each building held a single prize to be claimed, or some similar restriction had been put in place. The thought of how many lives had been sacrificed to create such defenses made Ye Tian's skin go cold. Ye Tian guessed roughly what had happened. The protective force that had sealed this place must have faded long ago, leaving the space preserved until someone in his time finally rediscovered it. He didn't dwell on it. The golden-armored corpse golem lunged again, and Ye Tian met it without hesitation. His light sword flashed. The blade cut straight through the golem, cleaving it in two. The afterglow of his strike continued on, slicing toward the massive formation above. It only stirred a faint ripple in the array, no impact beyond that. The two halves of the golem were drawn up and taken away by the formation, and an opening appeared where none had been before. "You may enter," the place seemed to say. Ye Tian stepped into a small courtyard and looked around. The rooms were bare and simple. He opened one at random and found a study lined with books. He reached out and touched a volume. The paper disintegrated beneath his fingers, turning instantly to dust. Just ordinary books, Ye Tian thought, his expression darkening. Some rare texts can survive for millennia, but ordinary books rot away long before then. After searching the study, Ye Tian found only 3 books that had been preserved. Their covers were made from the hide of some fierce beast, yet time had treated them kindly. The volumes were intact. He wondered if the script inside belonged to the ancient civilization. When he opened them, the characters were unfamiliar, neither modern script nor any variant of ancient Chinese. At first he couldn't read them, but as he held each book, the meaning became clear. The books had been infused with spiritual power. That power translated the words directly into his mind. It wasn't unusual. Many secret tomes were enchanted to reveal their contents to a suitable reader. All 3 were cultivation manuals. One was a silver-grade sword technique called the cross-secret sword. Another was an advanced Yuanli cultivation technique. The third dealt with the nature of spiritual force, a theory arguing that if one's mental force reached sufficient strength, it could persist independently, no longer bound to the body. Ye Tian found that theory odd and, for the moment, of little practical use. Ye Tian left the 3 secret tomes where they lay. He had a strong instinct that the moment he took one, he'd be ripped away by some teleportation trap. "Search the other rooms," he ordered, then moved on, making his way through the adjoining chambers. Chapter 153. Ye Tian didn't take long to unlock and search every room in the courtyard. There were indeed many valuable items. The most eye-catching was a long sword whose rating approached the top tier of Yuanli-class blades, a weapon revered in the Zhonghai superbase as a true divine armament. Judging by its workmanship, Ye Tian guessed it had probably been a Shangpin, upper-grade divine weapon in the age of the ancient civilization. Now, however, it had downgraded to a Zhongpin, mid-grade. Despite its pedigree, that sword wasn't very useful to him. Instead, Ye Tian picked up another blade, one that only just qualified as a divine soldier-class weapon and sat at the low end of that rank. He already wielded a high-level Yuanli sword, and by strict grade comparison, this new find was inferior. Still, the lower-grade divine blade was more compatible with him. With his deft hands and the extra yuan force he could channel into it, the weapon's performance wouldn't slip, and he could keep it at a stable level. Even a subordinate divine sword was a fine prize. No sooner had he taken the lower-grade divine soldier sword than a sudden force seized him and teleported him away. When he came out of the array again, Ye Tian found himself standing just outside the courtyard. He resumed his search for new buildings immediately. Over the next several days, he uncovered a number of smaller halls and vaults, but none contained the gold-level sword technique or the spirit-refining treasure he was after. The loot he did find was fairly ordinary: weapons, high-grade yuan force cultivation manuals, and elixirs designed to help break through acupuncture points. Those elixirs were stored behind specialized formations that kept most of their potency intact, so they still had high market value. A few years ago, they would have excited him, but now Ye Tian barely glanced at them. His priorities had changed. On the 10th day, a pillar of light suddenly shot up in the distance. Ye Tian flew toward it at top speed. After a short while, he came upon a massive palace, more magnificent than any structure he'd seen so far. Several king-level cultivators were circulating around it, their presences like storm clouds. Ye Tian suspected something precious lay inside the palace, and that a conflict might be about to erupt. Time to use the disguise talent. Ye Tian activated his camouflage, reshaping his body and features until he looked like a pale young man. He kept flying forward. As he drew near, he saw the palace was laced with countless cracks. The formation around it was incomplete. Dozens of king-level powerhouses were hammering at the array. The burst of light he'd seen earlier was a fault line, a node where the formation had already been pierced, letting its power leak out in a terrifying glare. "Long River Superbase people," someone shouted. Ye Tian frowned. At the same moment, members of the Chang Superbase spotted him, and their faces went pale. They had realized the same thing. That blinding light was what had drawn him here. "Kill him," Two king-level fighters lunged forward. One unleashed a marksmanship technique, a single shot that seemed to rend the void itself. The other called on his fire dragon talent. A colossal dragon of flame tore through the air toward Ye Tian. Both moved with the force and speed of four-star kings. "Ants," Ye Tian muttered. He blurred, vanished in an instant, and his blade flashed. In the next instant, two bodies toppled from midair and crashed to the ground. One strike, two gone. Ye Tian stood where he'd been, blade dripping, unhurried. He wore a disguise, but he no longer seemed worried about being exposed. Whoever had dared to move against him had paid for it with their lives. "You actually killed them. Do you even know who they are?" a young man shouted, fury in his voice. "They were top talents from our Shanghai superbase, the Iron Dragon Castle." Ye Tian met his glare. "If you've got a problem with it, then fight me," he said plainly. The angry youth faltered, unable to reply. After a moment, another young man, apparently the group's leader, rose and stepped forward, smoothing his temper into a diplomatic smile. "Friend from the Shanghai superbase," he said, addressing Ye Tian, "there's no need to escalate. You've already proven your strength. Why not join forces with us to break the formation in this great hall? Chang has been observing this chamber for generations. The formation is weakened and close to collapse. If we break it together, the restriction that lets each person take only one treasure will fall. Then any of the treasures inside can be claimed." "Team up?" Ye Tian allowed a brief nod. He agreed, outwardly. At the same time, his real plan was different. While the others concentrated their attacks on the formation and discussed strategy, Ye Tian quietly began to work on it as well, but more subtly than anyone realized. He checked the others' talent records. The boy leading them was Sun Xingye, a Huiyue-level talent, and the rest weren't shabby either. 3 of them were at the pseudo-mystic tier, and their combined combat strength put them at roughly the 7-star king level. In short, they were among the top talents at the Shanghai superbase. One of the younger men leaned forward. "Brother Sun, why don't you just shoot him? With your position in the Shanghai superbase and 7-star king combat strength, you could kill him easily, couldn't you?" Sun Xingye's expression grew serious. "I don't think his strength is that far below mine. What's the point of killing him for a couple of meager rewards? Besides, he's far more useful alive. He could help us break the formation. If we get through it and find something valuable, we can split the gains later." "Brother Sun, that's worth thinking about, but we're worried." The other youth quickly placated, laying it on thick. Ye Tian couldn't catch every word, but he didn't need to. The conversation wasn't promising. They were clearly trying to use him, so why should he let them use him without getting something in return? If he could siphon the crowd's power to shatter the formation, it would save him a great deal of trouble. So they fed their strength into the array without pause. The crowd's roar went on day and night, and finally another formation node gave way. The whole array began to crack. They were down to the wire. One more node, and the entire formation would collapse. Excitement rippled through the hall. This was a great hall. Who knew what treasures lay inside? Ye Tian, however, frowned. He felt a chill of unease, as if something was about to go wrong. Another day passed. At last, the final node broke. With a thunderous rumble, the great array dimmed and then fell silent. It wasn't destroyed, merely shut down, but that was enough. Once the formation stopped functioning, they could walk in and take whatever they wanted. "Ha! Treasure! Here I come!" A king-rank cultivator shouted and lunged forward. Others followed, desperate to be the first to claim the spoils. Ye Tian hung back, reluctant to rush in. Then a scream tore through the hall. "Ah!" It was the cry of the first king rank who had rushed ahead. Then, a renowned king-level figure burst out, sprinting at full speed. The void thundered, rumble, and a golden-armored corpse golem exploded from the hall. More golden-armored corpse golems poured out in dense waves, and the king-level warrior was ripped apart, shredded into a spray of blood. "Damn those puppets! Find them!" Sun Xingye, whose power rivaled a 7-star king, took on the aspect of an ancient war god and unleashed a devastating fist technique, a blow that could hush the heavens. An overwhelming majesty radiated from him as he sent golden-armored corpse puppets flying one after another, demonstrating his near invincibility. But when one of the gold-armored puppets, wielding a combat blade, deflected his strike, Sun Xingye's domineering aura shattered. Fear flashed across his face, and he turned and fled without hesitation. He no longer cared about pride or treasure. If he stayed, the swarm of Jar, golden armored corpse golems, would surround and tear him apart. Chapter 154. Some kind of mechanism must have been triggered. A large number of golden armor golems have appeared. Ye Tian frowned. He had suspected there was more than one golden armor golem in the building. If there had only been one, then whoever killed it would have prevented anyone who came afterward from encountering it. But that hadn't happened. The only explanation was that many of the golems had been hidden deeper within the formation space, hard to detect. By breaking the main array, they'd released every hidden guardian at once. Now the formation spat them out. Several of the golden armored puppets were no weaker than 4 or even 5-star king-level fighters, and the one that had just struck Sun Xingye was clearly 7-star king-level. That particular golem must once have been a 7-star king-level genius before death, later refined into this corpse puppet. Ye Tian read the aura imprint and immediately sensed the golem's talent profile. It was a golden armor golem. Cultivation talent, Morning Star. Defense talent, Pseudo Upanishads, 40%. Strength talent, top. Sword talent, Morning Star. Speed talent, Pseudo Upanishads, 20%. Those numbers meant the golem was oddly unbalanced for a 7-star king-level combatant. Its strength was at the top tier, but its speed was comparatively weak. What really caught Ye Tian's attention, though, was the sword talent, Morning Star. He'd been practicing sword arts himself, and a weapon talent of that level was priceless. He'd always assumed that top was the ceiling for sword aptitude, that there was nothing higher. Seeing the Morning Star sword talent changed that. Weapon and unarmed talents, he realized, could be cultivated just like cultivation talent. They weren't the same kind of special talent as the others. If a Morning Star level existed for swordsmanship, then higher grades, Bright Moon level and beyond, must exist as well. Such weapon talent was rare among humans. Even the Zhonghai super base didn't possess a Morning Star sword talent. Ye Tian's heart stirred at the thought. A Morning Star sword talent appearing on this golden armored corpse golem was an extraordinary discovery. Copy. Ye Tian seized one chance to copy the golden armored corpse golem's Morning Star sword technique. For the second copy, he hesitated, then settled on the Pseudo Upanishad's defense talent. The golem's defense was only at 40%, while its Pseudo Aoi level speed talent was just 20%. More important, if he copied the Pseudo Upanishad's defense now, there was a real possibility of raising it all the way to the Upanishad's level later. He had originally hoped to copy Tiger's 50% Pseudo Upanishad's defense, but he'd never run into Tiger, so he took the safer option, the golem's 40%. Copy. With the 40% Pseudo Upanishad's defense talent secured, a horde of golden armored corpse golems surged toward him, and a 7-star king-level golden armored corpse golem led the charge. Die! Ye Tian swept his hand, and a sea of fire fell from above, his triple Pseudo Upanishad's fire domain talent unleashed. The ground trembled as the flames roared down. Infernos licked at the golden armor golems, turning the weaker ones into slag in an instant. Against the stronger golems, the flames barely registered, more like an irritating tickle than a wound, and yet Ye Tian still felled no fewer than 100 of them. With a single blow, he even shattered a 7-star king-level golden armor corpse golem, its body folded into his carry-on space. Embedded in that corpse was a 20% Pseudo Upanishad's level speed talent, a fragment he could copy later. He was about to press the attack when a terrifying aura rolled out from the depths of the Great Hall. Holy Grade Corpse Golem, the warning rang through him. Ye Tian's expression went cold. A black corpse golem burst from the hall, its presence far beyond ordinary saint-level power, unmistakably a top-tier saint-level corpse golem. He didn't hesitate. Teleporting away at once, he kept jumping until he'd put a long distance between himself and the hall. Once he was sure he was alone, Ye Tian sank into the earth, carving out a small hollow. There, in the quiet, he began fusing the talents he had just acquired. Fuse the Pseudo Upanishad defensive talent first. Ye Tian had been expecting the Upanishad talent to manifest, so he prioritized fusing the Pseudo Upanishad defensive talent. The moment he gave the order, the air around him trembled. Rumbles rolled through his body as the fusion began. A dense tide of defensive mysteries surged up and spread over him, coalescing into a web of silken sigils that seemed to be written across his skin. The process was agonizing. Pain lanced through him so violently he blacked out before he fully registered what was happening. How long he lay unconscious, he couldn't tell. When he finally came to, the first thing he did was check his talents. Defense talent Upanishad. Upanishad, my first Upanishad. Ye Tian's chest tightened with excitement. He wanted to confirm the amplification effect. The God of War ring sat in this space, cut off from its virtual world interface, so he couldn't rely on the ring's simulation to test the talent. He had to do the simplest thing and test it directly on himself. He generated a modest strike and braced himself, observing how the new defensive pattern responded. The readout was instant, 100 times increase. Ye Tian allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. This was more than he'd hoped for. The Upanishad's defensive talent multiplied his defense 100-fold, an almost unnatural amplification. Coupled with the pseudo-Upanishad's level Congo bone talent and the top-tier healing talent, he was virtually unkillable. Ye Tian could feel the defensive Upanishads wholly merge with him. When the talent stirred, faint law lines appeared across his skin, the talent marks the law had inscribed on his body. The Upanishads felt like a physical instinct, fusing into both his soul and flesh. Upanishads, activate, he commanded. In an instant, a vast defensive dome erupted around Ye Tian, its surface traced with the patterns of the defensive law, Swan Ao. He had awakened the Upanishad's defensive talent. Ye Tian understood exactly what that meant. Not only could he shield himself, but he could extend that protection to those around him. In raw power, the Upanishad's defense now surpassed the pseudo-Upanishad's level defensive talent. With that secured, Ye Tian turned his attention to fusing the Morningstar Sword technique talent. 10 minutes later, the fusion with the Morningstar Sword talent had worked. Ye Tian gripped his blade and let the sword intent that lingered in the darkness wash over him. What had been an obscure, tangled understanding of the blade now flowed into his mind like water breaking a dam. Old blockages dissolved one by one, and the deeper meanings of the art opened with startling clarity. His rate of comprehension felt at least 5 times faster. The Morningstar Sword technique was brutally efficient. It accelerated insight in a way he had never experienced. A grin slipped onto his face. This pocket space was a treasure trove. If something as rare as a Morningstar Sword talent could be found here, who knew what else might lie hidden? But time was against him. He'd originally been permitted only a month inside. 10 days had already slipped by, leaving 20 more. 20 days wasn't long, and it would be difficult to make a truly great haul in so little time. Ye Tian's smile faded, and he tightened his jaw. He hadn't wanted to abandon the riches in the Great Hall. Not the golden-armored corpse golems, not the other artifacts. He still wanted to kill them, take what they carried, and painstakingly copy their talents later. The thought of leaving all that behind made him frown. Giving up so much now felt unacceptable. But his strength still wasn't enough. He was no match for that saint-level corpse puppet. From his estimates, the golem's attack power was at least 20 dragons. Even though his own power talent had been boosted to 60% of the pseudo-mystic level, multiplying his strength 50-fold, his total attack still only came to about 12 dragons. That didn't begin to measure up. Worse, the saint-level corpse golem was terrifyingly fast. His own speed couldn't keep pace. If he hadn't used teleportation to get away, and if the golem had chosen to hold the area around the hall, he very likely wouldn't have escaped at all. As a king-level cultivator, Ye Tian thought, I can't master that saint-level corpse puppet technique unless I have a multi-door Upanishad's level talent, or unless my power talent itself rises to the Upanishad's level. Unless. He fell silent, mind already turning over a possible way out. Chapter 155. If I broke through to the saint level here, I could sweep through every one of the golden golems in that great hall, couldn't I? Ye Tian mused. The saint level was undeniably formidable, but it wasn't the same as the legendary saint-level titans listed on the holy list. Those were practically invincible. If ordinary saints were as powerful as the names on that list, they could cross the Void Town with one hand and slaughter anyone they pleased. A freshly ascended saint typically only had about 100 Vientian force. Even with some special talent, their dragon force attack might be only a single unit. That was nowhere near enough to crack a saint-grade corpse golem. Ye Tian was different. His attack base already stood at 12 dragon force. Once he broke through to the saint level, his physical strength would surge roughly tenfold, which would push his attack to around 120 dragon force. The thought of that kind of power was terrifying. This space can support saint-tier golems, Ye Tian thought. So it doesn't suppress the realm, it's the temple that bars saint-tier constructs from entering. Most cultivators in the king-level realm were desperate to push their pseudo-Upanishads talent past the 70% mark, but Ye Tian didn't need that. He already possessed an Upanishads defense talent. It was regrettable that he couldn't upgrade his other talents to the Upanishads level yet, but that wasn't a permanent limitation. He could copy more Upanishads talents later. He weighed the loss against the gain and made his decision. He would shatter through to the holy realm here and now. Ye Tian sat cross-legged and began to cultivate the Qingyuan alchemy soul technique, recorded in the Qingyuan Yuanli secret manual, using the art to refine and purify his spiritual power. In the spirit world, his power began to vibrate violently. Every trace of impurity was shaken loose as his spiritual energy was tempered, coalescing into a sharper, stronger current. The refinement was relentless. With each pulse, Ye Tian felt his cultivation deepen and his spirit grow more resilient, readying him for the ascent he had chosen. The transformation of spiritual power into divine consciousness is a process of refinement and purification. Spiritual power is insubstantial. Divine consciousness is like matter. In other words, it is a process of materialization. As time passed, more and more of Ye Tian's spiritual power took on substance, and his Shiri-level cultivation talent began to manifest. The progress ticked upward, 1, 20%, 30%. By the end of the first day, he had reached 50%. By the end of the second day, it was 90%. On the third day, he finally reached the final stage, fully materialized. "Break," Ye Tian cried. The last sliver of spiritual power condensed into real, substantial consciousness within his mind. Then the metamorphosis erupted. A tremendous rumble shook the air as the newly materialized divine consciousness was born. It shot out from the sea of souls and fanned outward. It spread for miles in every direction, 10 miles, 20 miles, then farther still. Everything within that range came under the sway of his divine consciousness. A single breath now covered 1,000 miles. This was the true power of divine consciousness. Meanwhile, Yuan Qi swirled over Ye Tian's skin in a living cascade, pouring relentlessly into his body. It refined his flesh and surged his physical strength to dizzying new heights. But the supply of vital energy here was limited. In desperation, Ye Tian emptied the fierce beast blood he kept in his spatial pouch, spilling it into a churning sea of blood, and then unleashed his blood-eating talent to consume that blood and restore the energy his body urgently required. He followed that by feeding himself a large number of qi stones to replenish his yuan qi. By the time the breakthrough finally stalled, his fierce beast blood reserves and qi stones were nearly exhausted. A tremor ran through his soul, and a flood of insight hit him at once. He understood then that the enlightenment net gained when ascending to the divine level was staggering, so great that it could raise a cultivator with a 70% pseudo-Upanishads aptitude to the full Upanishads level. Ye Tian did not have that much aptitude. He was only around 60%, but the same surge of enlightenment should be able to push his 60% pseudo-Upanishads potential up to roughly 90%. Ye Tian sank into enlightenment, probing ever deeper into the mysteries of power. Half an hour later, the insight faded, and he opened his eyes. His power talent had reached 90% of the pseudo-Upanishad level. He stood and shifted his weight. The void itself rippled. His physical strength had increased tenfold. For a moment it ran wild through him, but after a few breaths he brought it under control and felt it settle like a second nature. Almost. "Time to go to the main hall," he murmured. He surged forward like a streak of light and, shortly after, arrived again at the ancient building. As he approached the main chamber, a tide of golden-armored corpse golems burst forth, bellowing as they charged. With a casual wave of his hand, Ye Tian cut them down. Scores collapsed under the force of that single motion. A handful of golems, however, bore rare talents, pseudo-Upanishad-level speed and power. He spared those, absorbing them intact into his pocket space. The hall shuddered with a deep, rolling rumble. The black, saint-grade corpse golem burst forward, a crushing pressure radiating from its bulk. For Ye Tian, though, that force meant little. He only needed one word: view. An information overlay flickered across his vision, the golem's attributes appearing on his inner retina. Species: black flaming golem, cultivation talent, morning star strength, talent, advanced speed, talent, medium. Despite being a saint-grade construct, the golem's talents were unremarkable. Nothing exceptional. Its power came from cultivation level, not any rare aptitude. Worthless. With a single stroke of his blade, Ye Tian cleaved the holy corpse in two. The rest were even easier. He swept through the hall, cutting down the golden-armored corpse golems one after another, methodically clearing every corridor and chamber. Treasure time had come. Ye Tian looted everything: divine soldier fragments, top-tier Yuanli cultivation manuals, rare elixirs, and strange ores. He emptied every secret room until there was nothing left. At last he stood before the final main chamber of the Great Hall. The formation in the main chamber still held, but because the formation in the main hall had already been destroyed, the chamber's protective array was now very weak, likely to dissipate on its own soon. Ye Tian's pulse quickened. If no one had come in since it was set, there might be a great prize inside. "Break!" he shouted. He gathered his strength and slashed with the heavenly pole slash. The technique detonated against the array and shattered it outright. Ye Tian pushed open the secret door and stepped inside. The room beyond was a true chamber of secrets, an inner sanctuary the size of a great hall, sparsely furnished and hush-filled. Only one wall was lined with shelves, and on those shelves lay a handful of objects. Ye Tian walked over and scanned them at a glance. A golden talisman, a knife, a single seed, 3 vials of elixir, 5 black-bound books, a token. Nothing else was on the shelves. Ye Tian was the first to open the golden secret book. The moment the pages unfolded, he grinned in disbelief. A gold-grade sword technique, he breathed. The manual titled Gold-Level Sword Skill, Heavenly Desert Sword Domain. It wasn't a simple, single-target move, but a large-scale formation-style technique that struck multiple opponents at once. Far rarer and more valuable than ordinary single-strike sword skills. After a quick read-through, Ye Tian stored the technique in his carry space with a satisfied nod. He then examined the sword. Its rank surpassed the highest tier of Yuanli-class blades. It was beyond the divine soldier grade altogether. Ye Tian couldn't name its exact classification, only that it was an exceptionally valuable weapon. He accepted it into his inventory. There was also a seed of unknown origin. Even after so long, it still gave off a faint spark of life, clearly something precious. He pocketed it too. There were other items, but Ye Tian didn't want to study them in haste. He'd inspect everything properly once he was out of the hall. Gathering the treasures, he left the Great Hall. Chapter 156. Ye Tian had a bad feeling. If he stayed in that Great Hall any longer, he would inevitably run into other martial artists. Sun Xingye and the others hadn't died at the start, and the hall had already been breached by a massive formation. Even with the countless golden-armored corpse golems inside, people would still flock there for the treasures. Some might even forego a timely breakthrough to the holy level in order to grab the spoils. At first, Sun Xingye and the others hadn't rushed to break through. They'd assumed they could dismantle the formation quickly together, so there was no need to force a rapid ascension. They'd simply delayed the impact. They hadn't expected the defense to include so many golden golems. That was a serious miscalculation. If Sun Xingye and the few survivors managed to get away safely, they would almost certainly force their way into the holy level and then come back to clear the hall. Ye Tian's expression darkened. Fortunately, their breakthrough has been slowed, he thought. He had earned that edge. As a Shi-Ri level prodigy, Ye Tian had broken into the holy level in under 3 days. If Sun Xingye and the others tried to make the same jump now, they wouldn't do it in 7 or 8 days. They'd need far longer. That gave Ye Tian the breathing room he needed. Ye Tian flew to a remote mountain and set up a temporary cave dwelling. He went through the last of the treasures he'd taken, 3 vials of elixir, 5 black-covered secret books, and a small token. He refined the token, and only then did its purpose reveal itself. Core Disciple Token of the Black Sky Corp sect. It meant nothing to him. He had no use for a sect token. He turned his attention to the 5 books. Now, for the first time, he could actually read them. From the earlier secret manuals, he had memorized the basic characters and the meanings that had been transmitted to him by spiritual force, and he had painstakingly recorded each word's meaning. With that foundation, the new texts fell into place. The books weren't cultivation manuals. 3 were on alchemy, recipes and processes for concocting elixirs. Some of the formulations were astonishing, rare, almost heaven-defying, medicines that could raise one's innate talent or broaden aptitude. But when Ye Tian looked at the lists of ingredients, he frowned. The herbs and minerals named were unfamiliar to him, and many sounded impossible to obtain. He shook his head. These elixirs, powerful though they sounded, would be nearly impossible for him to make. Among the recovered texts were 2 volumes dedicated to the Black Sky Corp sect. As Ye Tian read, he realized that he, and even Wang Yan, had been wrong about almost everything. The so-called ancient civilizations weren't ancient Earth cultures at all. They were foreign civilizations from other worlds, extensions of distant planets. The Black Sky Corp sect wasn't merely a native order. It was a gate cult, a sect that bridged worlds. By accident, some of its disciples slipped through fractures in space and arrived on Earth. At the same time, sects from other planets poured through the same rifts. In that era, titans from different worlds clashed on Earth's surface. Their battles laid waste to the land. The world's life force was drained and scattered. Eventually, as mysteriously as they had appeared, the off-world sects retreated. One by one, they returned through the spatial fissures. They did not clear away every trace. Relics and ruins remained behind. The 2 secret books had been written by a great emperor of the Black Sky Corp sect. After penning them, he departed with the sect's strongest practitioners, leaving the planet. All that was left on Earth were a solitary shrine and a handful of outer disciples, those few who had been too weak or too reluctant to follow. Reading this, Ye Tian understood the true scale of what had happened here, and how deeply he and Wang Yan had misunderstood the past. It must be because the outer disciples could no longer cultivate on a land drained of spirit energy, Ye Tian murmured, piecing it together. One by one they reached the limits of their lives and died. Their descendants couldn't rise to be fighters, and the Black Heaven Corp sect's line gradually fell apart. The more he thought about it, the clearer the pattern became. The relics of the ancient civilization weren't some alien leftovers at all, but the ruins of those very sects. Back then, the spatial rifts that riddled the Earth linked to the realms of those sect gates. Now those same rifts open to worlds infested with ferocious beasts. In short, the age of the great sects, the Zongmen era, had given way to an age ruled by monsters. It's that simple, he said to himself. Even though the sects had wrecked the original balance of the world, they'd also left behind a tremendous inheritance. Otherwise, humanity would have been wiped out entirely in this beast-ridden age. After studying the 5 secret texts, everything clicked into place. Ye Tian finally understood the true nature of the 3 vials of elixir: a single vial of the talent pill, a vial of the divine forging pill, and a vial of the life-extending pill. The talent pill could raise a warrior's innate aptitude to the morning star rank, and there was only 1 of them. The divine forging pills could refine spiritual power and help a king-level cultivator break into the sacred rank. There were 3 of those. The life-extending pill was the most extraordinary. It could directly add 100 years to one's lifespan, a treasure that countless ancient monsters longed for. All 3 items had been left by the Emperor for the descendants of the Black Heaven Corp sect. Sadly, those descendants had never found the sealed chamber, otherwise these treasures would long ago have been taken. Ye Tian even guessed that the formation protecting the main hall had been broken during a fight that erupted among the outer gate disciples left behind by the sect. When you thought about it, that was entirely plausible. It was a pity those descendants hadn't retrieved the treasures, and now, by fortune or fate, they had ended up in Ye Tian's hands. If I get the Forging God pill, I'll give one to Wang Yan, and the rest will be mine. With the treasures in that great hall on top of it, my wealth will shoot through the roof. Ye Tian had been buzzing with excitement. That excitement didn't last long. He quickly ran into a problem he hadn't expected. He couldn't get any more treasure. He went into one building after another and found no golden armored corpse puppets to fight, and every entrance was sealed by formations he couldn't break. At first, he thought it was a fluke, but after checking several buildings in a row, he saw the same pattern everywhere. Finally, it clicked. The formations were keyed to cultivation level. They could sense a person's strength. Once your cultivation reached the holy level, the formations wouldn't open for you. Only those at the king level could enter and take the treasures. Why didn't anyone tell me this? He muttered. No wonder so many king-level people never tried to become holy level. As soon as they did, they'd be cut off from these treasure chambers. The realization hit Ye Tian like a wall. He felt a flash of helplessness mixed with frustration. Ye Tian smiled as the thought crossed his mind. If Sun Xing'e went to the Great Hall after he himself advanced to the Holy Grade and reached Saint level and found all the treasures gone, so that he could no longer claim them, would he be furious? He would. Elsewhere, inside the temple's secluded space, Sun Xing'e was breaking through to the holy level. He had been in retreat for 7 days, and with his brilliant moon-tier talent, he was finally about to solidify his spiritual power and form a divine consciousness. Thunder rolled through the silent chamber as the divine mind was born. He had broken through. The change was instantaneous and devastating. His strength jumped tenfold, his speed, his defenses, all increased dramatically. The clarity gained from the advancement let him push his Psa, Eudo-mystic aptitude, up to 90% in a single bound. Power flooded him anew. He laughed, almost maniacal with triumph. All the treasures in that great hall will be mine. Unable to contain himself, Sun Xing'e shot toward the main hall. When he arrived in front of it, he paused, frowning. What about the golden armor golem? Will it be hard to get it out? He wondered aloud. With that doubt nudging at him, he stepped into the great hall. Where are my treasures? Who did this? Sun Xing'e exploded with rage. He had gambled everything for those relics. He'd abandoned the chance to refine his Upanishad's talent properly. He had planned to remain secluded for a few more years to push his pseudo-Upanishad's grade power to 70% and then force a breakthrough to the holy level. That breakthrough would have permanently upgraded his pseudo-Upanishad's talent into a true Upanishad's grade. Instead, he had rushed in for the treasures. Now the loot was gone, and all his effort had been for nothing. Worse, reaching the holy level changed everything. He couldn't go back and scavenge those vaults the way he once could. It was a double loss. Damn it, who the hell is responsible? He was certain it had to be someone who had already broken through to the holy level before him and set this bait. He ran through a list of possible king-level suspects in his head. Then his thoughts stopped on one face. That miserable-looking youth, he muttered. Sun Xing'e thought of Ye Tian, the only person who fit the profile, and a sudden cold killing intent flared up in him. But the image he had of Ye Tian was the boy's disguised appearance. If that was the trail, it was one he couldn't follow. Ye Tian had vanished in a mask. Sun Xing'e knew he would never find him again. Chapter 157. Ye Tian realized he could no longer get the treasure, so he stopped searching. After all, a given chamber could only yield one treasure, and he wasn't short of minor spoils anyway. With the matter settled, he turned his attention back to cultivation. His first focus was a gold-grade sword technique, the Heavenly Desert Sword Domain. With his sword intent realm already at 80%, he had more than enough foundation to push this technique to the initial accomplishment stage. At the same time, he began training toward the divine, holy tier. Cultivating to the divine tier is not the same as advancing to the king tier. The king tier mainly opens up spatial caverns and expands one's external spatial abilities, whereas the divine tier is about opening the brain domain. Divine consciousness is the essential foundation for opening the brain domain. Without it, trying to force the brain domain open will almost certainly lead to death or permanent disability. Modern experts in the 21st century estimated that ordinary people could develop their brain domain to 6 to 10%. But the truth is far humbler. Human brain domain development rarely reaches even 1%. Ye Tian knew the risks and the rarity of true progress, but he also understood how crucial divine consciousness would be if he hoped to advance. He settled into training with renewed focus and caution. Humans used to know very little about the brain domain. They naively believed they had developed 10% of it, but that was only the shallow brain domain, the surface level of consciousness. The deep brain domain, the true inner consciousness space, remained completely unexplored. Through cultivation, people learned to open the shallow domain and greatly increased memory and cognitive capacity, but that was still only superficial development. It is at the saint holy level that the deep brain domain begins to open. Once the deep brain domain starts to awaken, even a single percent matters. From the first 1% onward, each additional percent of opening brings significant gains to a cultivator's physical strength, speed, and defense. If a saint eventually opens the deep brain domain to 100%, their body strength will rival that of 10 dragons. Even so, a saint without any special talent can only reach a limited peak, at best an attack power around 20 dragon strength, still far below the current Ye Tian. Moreover, if a warrior fails to raise his innate talent while at the king level, it becomes exceedingly difficult to improve it later at the saint level. The talent Dan, the pill used to boost innate aptitude, cannot elevate someone's talent up to saint level on its own. In short, a saint who lacks rare talent is still vastly inferior to a prodigy ranked among the kings. Of course, to reach the holy level, a cultivator needs a talent rank above Morning Star. A Morning Star genius who doesn't acquire a treasure to boost their aptitude is simply out of luck. 3 days later, Ye Tian advanced the Golden Grade Sword technique, Heavenly Wilderness Sword Domain, to the entry level. 10 days after that, he pushed it on to the Shaocheng realm. At that point, his Golden Heavenly Sword Domain hit a temporary bottleneck, and it became difficult to progress further. Even so, Ye Tian was very satisfied. The Golden Heavenly Sword Domain multiplied his attack power 15-fold. That increase alone wasn't staggering, but the technique was an area, group, attack, and in group combat, it was devastating. With the 15-fold boost from the Heavenly Wilderness Sword Domain, Ye Tian's effectiveness in battle rose dramatically. He did the math in his head. His raw physical power alone equaled the force of millions of elephants. Fused with his Yuan force, it climbed even higher. When he was promoted to the holy level, his strength aptitude jumped to 90% of the pseudo-mystical standard, a multiplier that boosted his base attack roughly 80-fold, while the Heavenly Wild Sword technique multiplied his strike another 15 times. Put together, his single most powerful blow now reached the equivalent of 240 dragons. That was more than enough to wipe out a squad of top saints who lacked any special talents. "I really am strong," Ye Tian breathed, satisfaction dark and calm in his voice. Still, he knew this was only the beginning. His deep brain domain had only been opened to 1%. As he peeled back more layers of that realm, his power would become far more terrifying. Holy rank and emperor rank would one day be as insignificant as ants beneath him. A month passed. On the appointed day, a repulsive force rolled through the shrine's space. It seized him and, in an instant, deposited him in the great hall of the shrine. He had already dispelled his disguise talent and stood revealed in his true form. The other kings were summoned as well, many of them still cloaked in their masks. But when their eyes fell on him, something in the hall shifted. A chill of killing intent exploded into the void the moment Wind and Blood stepped forward. "Sun Qinghe, what do you mean by this?" Wind and Blood's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "You actually hunted down a king level in our Zhonghai super base?" Wind and Blood advanced on Sun Qinghe with slow, deliberate steps. The pressure he exuded flattened the air around them and forced Sun Qinghe to take a step back, his face paling. At this moment, Wind and Blood's power was already at the holy level, and far more dangerous than it looked. He had found a relic inside the temple space that boosted his power potential to 70% of the pseudo-mystic tier. Then, when he launched his attack against a holy level opponent, That pressure pushed the 70% pseudo-mystic potential over the threshold into genuine mystic-level power. His combat strength had leapt many times over, leaving Sun Qinghe clearly outclassed. "You prey on the weak to feed the strong?" Sun Qinghe snapped, fury boiling in his tone. "You killed a king level from Zhonghai's superbase and stole a great hall's treasure." He swept his gaze across the hall, searching for the young man he blamed for the theft, but the youth was gone. Sun Qinghe's expression hardened as he realized the thief had vanished. They had all been teleported here together, so that person shouldn't have been able to slip away, right? Before Sun Qinghe could finish the thought, a cold wave of killing intent hit him from the direction of Windblood. Windblood's voice was ice. "So you think you can survive this? Do you really expect mercy?" Sun Qinghe felt the hatred like a blade and panicked. "Windblood, you're insane. How dare you try to kill me here? My emperor stands behind me. He won't let you get away with this." "You think I don't have an emperor behind me?" Windblood retorted, voice as calm as death. The other geniuses moved in, one after another, weapons and techniques flashing. Ye Tian hung back at the edge of the skirmish, watching, and the pieces fell into place in his mind. Sun Qinghe had recently ascended to the Saint Realm, but had failed to secure the treasure he sought. Desperate, he'd stolen artifacts from several geniuses of the Zhonghai superbase, and word had gotten out. Windblood had been sent to hunt him down. If Sun Qinghe hadn't been teleported away at just that moment, he would very likely have died. Then the ground trembled. The old temple began to crumble and blur at the edges. "The temple's collapsing! Get out of there!" someone shouted. A famed king-level cultivator burst from the temple, erupting up from the riverbed and breaking the surface of the water as he charged for safety. Many of the kings slipped away one after another, but Windblood wouldn't let Sun Qinghe leave. One of the dead kings had belonged to the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall. Ye Tian expected the two of them to come to blows, but before anything happened, another figure appeared. A great emperor had arrived. "Grandfather!" Sun Qinghe cried, rushing forward. Seeing him, the newcomer's face shone with relief. It was the Qingyun Emperor. Windblood's expression tightened the moment he recognized the visitor. At that instant, an emperor representing the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall strode into the clearing. He didn't waste words. Turning to the Qingyun Emperor, he made a blunt offer, an ultimatum. "Qingyun Emperor," the Tomahawk Lord said, 100,000 yuan chi stones and 10 king-level talent artifacts, each capable of raising a king-level special talent to at least the primary rank, and we'll let this matter drop. Refuse, and Windblood will carry out the execution of Sun Qinghe. Which do you choose?" The Qingyun Emperor did not hesitate. He bowed slightly and answered, "Very well. I will hand over 100,000 yuan chi stones and the 10 king-level talent treasures." Warblood Emperor. Ye Tian's face went cold the moment he heard the name. He recognized the origin at once, one of the 36 emperors on the imperial roster. Although this one only ranked 17th, that still made him an absolutely terrifying presence. The Qingyun Emperor was nowhere near his level. Seeing the talent signatures of the Warblood Emperor and of Windblood, Ye Tian felt a stab of covetousness. If his copying ability hadn't been on cooldown, he would have seized the chance to duplicate their skills immediately. Windblood possessed an Upanishad-grade power talent, and the Warblood Emperor carried an Upanishad-level boiling blood talent. He sighed inwardly. "Forget it, I'll copy them later." Chapter 158, Ye Tian, let's go back together. The daughter of the Sunset Moon Saint approached with a bright smile. It was clear the temple's space had treated her well. "All right." Ye Tian didn't refuse and walked back with her. They parted ways once they reached Zhonghai Superbase. As soon as he got home, Ye Tian sent word to Wang Yan. He had her contact information now, and she arrived at his residence the moment she received his message. "Ye Tian, I'm so glad you're back safe," Wang Yan said, her eyes fixed on him with a faint, lingering longing. Ye Tian could read the look in Wang Yan's eyes at once. Without hesitating, he took out a forging god Dan and handed it to her, carefully packed in a brand-new vial. "Sister Wang," he said, "this is the forging god Dan. I was lucky enough to refine my spirit power, but I only managed to get one." "One is enough." Wang Yan accepted the pill with obvious excitement. For this kind of pill, taking more than one won't help. If this single forging god Dan can't push me up to the saint level, I'll have no hope of ever reaching it. You've built up enough accumulation. You'll definitely succeed, Ye Tian assured her. Thank you for the blessing. Wang Yan smiled, then glanced at him with sudden curiosity. Ye Tian, your aura, have you broken through to the saint level? Yes. Ye Tian's expression was calm. I ran into some trouble in the temple's inner space and had to force a breakthrough into the saint level. I'm sorry you missed an opportunity because of me. Wang Yan's face darkened with guilt. In her mind, she'd cost him the chance to trigger his Upanishad's talent. She blamed herself entirely. Wang Yan didn't know exactly what Ye Tian had gained, but anything that could affect the Upanishads wasn't an ordinary prize. Ye Tian said nothing about it. He couldn't admit to owning an Upanishads-level defensive talent. When it came to his own trump card, of course, he would keep it hidden. Wang Yan didn't stay long at Ye Tian's residence. She left soon after, apparently in a hurry to press the attack on the holy level. After she was gone, Ye Tian began sorting through his spoils. First were the weapons. The best blade he'd taken out surpassed even top-tier Yuan Force knives and could serve as his main weapon going forward. The other significant gain was a secret Yuanli cultivation technique. At first, he'd been cultivating the Qingyuan Yuanli secret technique, a top-tier, second-rank Yuanli art. Compared with what he'd just obtained, though, it suddenly felt a little weak. This time he'd acquired more than a dozen top-level second-rank Yuanli secrets, and the best of them was even a first-rank, top-tier Yuanli art, the Golden Body Yuanli secret technique. He'd actually picked up 2 other first-rank techniques as well, but they were odd. Both required corpse qi, using a corpse's aura together with heaven and earth yuan qi to cultivate. He didn't dare touch those. He could have substituted fierce beast corpses, but he couldn't risk unknown after effects. The Golden Body technique alone, being a first-rank secret art, was more than enough. Judging by the sword techniques stored there, the hall's master must have been a sword prodigy. He'd collected a large number of methods. Alongside the single gold-grade technique, Heavenly Sword Domain, there were 6 silver-grade sword skills and no fewer than 50 bronze-grade ones. The pill stash was sizable too, though a few varieties were nearly exhausted. Ye Tian counted more than 100 flasks, mostly elixirs for tempering the body, refining meridians, and opening acupuncture points. A handful of bottles contained rare pills that aided in opening the brain domain. There were also several manuals on formation techniques, some describing top-tier arrays. One of them was the Morning Star formation, but Ye Tian couldn't make use of it. He lacked the Morning Star formation talent, wasn't specializing in formation techniques, and had little interest in them. There was, however, one formation that did catch his eye, the Supri Mi Juyuan array. Ye Tian's current cultivation chamber was only a high-level room. With the Juyuan array method he had learned, he was capable of constructing a top-tier cultivation chamber, and that would speed his progress dramatically. The problem was the materials. They were extremely rare. He had already recovered some while exploring the Great Hall, but the rest would have to be acquired by trade at the Scattered Cultivation Alliance. He sorted through his haul carefully. There were many treasures, but most were of no use to him. It made more sense to exchange them. So, he set off for the Alliance headquarters. At the Scattered Cultivation Alliance, he negotiated tirelessly, trading item after item until he obtained the components he needed, Yuan Qi stones among them. Both high-level and top-tier cultivation chambers consumed huge amounts of Yuan Qi stones. Without a steady supply, it was impossible to keep a top-level chamber running. On top of that, Ye Tian's time acceleration ability burned through his vitality like wildfire. Recovery elixirs and restorative medicines were therefore indispensable. When he accelerated time, he would exhaust himself quickly, so any pills that could replenish strength were a major priority. After bargaining away a pile of treasures, Ye Tian walked away with 80,000 Yuan Qi stones, a stack of restorative elixirs, and several rare items, most notably holy-grade fierce beast blood. He still hadn't traded away his best asset, though. He was holding back the gold-ranked sword technique Heavenly Desert Sword Domain for a very specific purpose. He needed a gold-ranked, single-strike sword skill. The Heavenly Desert Sword domain was powerful, but it wasn't suited to a one-hit, all-or-nothing strike. If he couldn't deliver that kind of single devastating blow, the technique would be outclassed in the kind of short-window fights that let a cultivator explode their strength. That loss of single-strike power would blunt his peak damage output, and he couldn't afford that. So he planned to trade the Heavenly Desert Sword domain in exchange for a gold-ranked sword art designed for a single, decisive attack. Soon he would set that trade in motion. He found a listing for trading a gold-rank sword skill. For sale, gold-rank sword skill, instant chop, transaction requirement, exchange for a gold-rank group attack sword skill. Publisher Crazy Sword Great Sage. It's a mission posted by the Crazy Sword Great Sage. Ye Tian murmured, surprised. The Crazy Sword Great Sage wasn't an ordinary saint. He was a greater saint, one of the top-tier fighters. At the Zhonghai Superbase, the saint rank was strictly subdivided by combat power rather than by cultivation alone. Ordinary saints, lesser saints, greater saints, and saint kings. An ordinary saint without exceptional talent could still push to the saint limit. Their physical strength would top out at roughly the equivalent of 10 dragons, and their attack power around 20 dragons, barely reaching the threshold of a lesser saint. Lesser saints ranged from about 20 to 100 dragon power, greater saints from 100 to 1,000, and anyone beyond 1,000 dragon power qualified as a saint king. Reaching the saint king rank is not so much a matter of talent as it is of time, specifically cultivation speed. Many of the top king-level fighters listed on the king's list have the potential. If they train to the absolute limit of the holy stage, they could become saint kings, and some could even defeat ordinary saint kings. The real barrier, however, is opening the brain domain. Fully activating one's brain domain is extremely difficult. A surprising number of the combat prodigies on the king's list only possess what's called the Morning Star aptitude, and for those people it can take centuries, sometimes even 1,000 years, to awaken a brain domain completely. Humanity's situation hasn't helped. Since the great upheaval on Earth just over 100 years ago, humans have had only a little more than a century of serious cultivation. Even in ancient times, humans didn't begin with vastly superior warriors. They were barely better than modern cultivators at first. As a result, although many talented individuals have reached the saint level, most have only partially opened their brain domains. Those who manage to reach the great saint stage with a deeply awakened brain domain and all the powers that entails are genuinely terrifying, and they are extremely rare. Saint kings, in particular, remain few and far between. The Holy List showed only 16 Saint King level figures. Reaching Emperor level was even rarer, not something that happened by chance. Opportunities like the temple ruins might come around more than once for a given person, but to break through to Emperor required countless resources and repeated chances, plus the innate talent of the Huiyue level. Only with all that could someone hope to reach the Imperial tier. The Crazy Sword Grand Sage, ranked 37th on the Holy List, was a formidable presence, in no way inferior to the current Ye Tian. When Ye Tian received the tip, he contacted the Crazy Sword Grand Sage at once. Before long, the Crazy Sword Grand Sage arrived. Chapter 159. They met in a room reserved for trading. The Crazy Sword Grand Sage glanced up when Ye Tian entered and gave a small, surprised exclamation. A new holy rank? He frowned briefly, then shrugged. Saints rose in rank all the time. He wasn't often at the Zhonghai Superbase, so it wasn't unusual not to know every newly promoted holy. This gathering was about business only. Scattered alliances, nothing more. You here to trade a gold-rank sword technique? The Crazy Sword Grand Sage asked. Good value, he added, sounding interested. Ye Tian nodded, but added, what I have is a group attack gold-rank sword technique. That's worth a lot more than a single-target gold-rank technique. The implication was clear. His technique was superior, and any fair exchange should reflect that. The Mad Sword Grand Sage said calmly, you need to understand, Instant Slash not only carries the power-amplifying properties of a gold-tier single-strike sword technique, it can also double the effectiveness of a sword skill. Its value isn't comparable to an ordinary gold-level technique. Otherwise, I wouldn't have authorized an equivalent exchange involving a gold-level group attack sword skill. The scattered Cultivation Alliance cares about fair exchanges, and as one of its senior officers, I won't break those rules. It can double a sword technique? Ye Tian's face lit up. That effect was very similar to his own silver-level technique, Heavenly Pole Chop. He felt a surge of excitement. All right, I agree. They both nodded and recited the oath. Each drew out the gold-level sword skill they were trading. Ye Tian passed his heavenly sword domain to the Mad Sword Grand Sage, and the Grand Sage handed over the original secret of instant slash to Ye Tian. After carefully verifying that the skills were genuine and intact, they sealed the deal. Happy cooperation! Happy cooperation! Neither the Crazy Sword Grand Sage nor Ye Tian asked the other's name. Neither volunteered one. It was strictly business, a clean exchange, no questions attached. Ye Tian left satisfied. He'd bought the gold-tier sword technique, Instant Slash, and had quickly found a buyer to trade with. The buyer handed over 6 silver-level sword techniques and several bronze-level ones in exchange for 100,000 yuan chi stones. After that, Ye Tian put up 2 first-class, top-tier Yuanli cultivation manuals from the Black Heaven Corpse sect for sale. His asking price was specific. Either 3 treasures capable of raising someone to high special talent as a great martial artist, or a single treasure that could boost a practitioner to top talent. Treasure that can raise a martial artist's innate talent is always priceless, especially first-class Yuanli cultivation manuals. Their market value is astronomical, and the best ones are essentially irreplaceable. The strange thing was that the trading requirements for these items weren't always strict. Some sellers would accept relatively modest conditions, allowing a mid-level fighter to obtain a treasure that could push them up to high special talent or even into the top special tiers. If a person at the king level used such an item and their talent jumped to high or above, the value of that change would skyrocket even further. Because of this, timing matters far more than most people realize. It's vastly more cost-effective to raise talent early in a disciple's career. Buying a talent-boosting treasure for a low-level practitioner can be tens or even hundreds of times cheaper than trying to do the same after they reach king level. By the time someone advances into the holy level, it's almost unrealistic to achieve such a promotion at any price unless backed by one of the great powers. Ye Tian understood all of this. He couldn't afford to wait until his sister Yeyu reached king level. If that happened, any attempt to improve her innate talent would become prohibitively expensive and would likely require the support of an influential faction. He needed to secure a talent-enhancing treasure for her now. While he was still young and affordable. 3 days after Ye Tian posted his request and quietly circulated the information, someone picked up the trail and contacted him with a trade offer. When Ye Tian returned to the Sanchu Alliance, he recognized the man handling the trade. It was Lu Feng, a king-level cultivator he'd met before in the shrine space, the one ranked 23rd on the king's list. Ye Tian, so it was you who made the trade, Lu Feng said, surprised. Those 2 first-rank Yuanli secrets you got, did they come from the shrine space? Yes, Ye Tian nodded. Lu Feng examined the items. One of them is the Heavenly Lin Cold Essence. It can directly raise a great martial artist's peak ice aptitude, but it hardly works at the king level, less than a 1% chance of actually improving it. I have a peak offensive aptitude, so that treasure is useless to me. The other first-rank Yuanli secret, though, will be useful. I can cultivate with it to boost my own power. Ye Tian trusted that Lu Feng was being honest. Lu Feng possessed a top-tier wind gun talent. A top cold ice talent would be of little use to him. Being a king-level cultivator, Lu Feng's chance of producing a child with true top cold ice talent was under 1%. Most likely, any offspring would inherit only a mid-level cold ice aptitude. Given that, it made perfect sense for Lu Feng to part with the Tianlin Cold Essence. The trade was the most cost-effective choice for him. All right, let's trade, Ye Tian said. They swore a brief oath and began the exchange. Lu Feng examined the 2 first-class top-tier Yuanli cultivation manuals Ye Tian handed over, and his face lit up. Excellent, he exclaimed. These are superb, even better than my own manuals. They're unusual, but there are plenty of ferocious beast corpses these days. These techniques are perfect for refining power from them. A pleasure doing business, Lu Feng added with a grin. Ye Tian offered a faint smile in return. Once the transaction was complete, he left. He had no intention of selling the rest of his treasures. This was the only deal he was willing to make. He had something more urgent to do now. Go to the Demon Sea base and bring his sister Ye Yu back. After staying at the Zhonghai super base for so long, he had already done his homework. There was only one way for alien fighters below king rank to be admitted to the Zhonghai super base, a recommendation from someone of saint rank, but each saint only has a single recommendation slot. Once a saint's one slot is used, there's no way for them to vouch for anyone else, unless the recommender is an emperor. An emperor can bring an entire household into the super base. No matter how many people come with them, they aren't limited by recommendation quotas. Because the super base's greatest strength depends on its emperors, it rolls out every favor for an emperor who joins. The more emperors the Zhonghai super base attracts, the stronger it becomes, so the base was always glad to welcome one. Until now, Ye Tian had only been king tier. He was listed among the kings, and his combat power far outstripped ordinary king-level fighters, but he still hadn't reached the saint tier. And by the rules, only Sant-level warriors could bring a major martial artist into the Zhonghai super base. That rule couldn't be broken. Now, however, Ye Tian had broken through into the saint tier, the holy level. That meant he finally had the authority to bring his sister Ye Yu into Zhonghai. He planned to return to the Demon Sea super base to fetch her. Little blood, I'm going back to the Demon Sea super base to bring my sister over. Want to come with me? Ye Tian asked Xiao Blood. I'm not going. I want to keep cultivating. Xiao Blood refused. Ye Tian knew why. Xiao Blood was cautious by nature. Since inheriting the Dragon Clan's legacy, his power had leapt forward. He'd unlocked a breakthrough. His talent had blossomed into a kind of quasi-mystical level, and by strength he could now rival a 4-star king-level fighter. It was impressive progress, but the gap between him and Ye Tian was still huge, especially now that Ye Tian had ascended to the saint tier. Xiao Blood, still reeling from the blow, found he couldn't stand up to Ye Tian's momentum. It was a harsh reminder. No matter how much he'd been training lately, trying to unravel deeper mysteries to close the gap, he simply wasn't strong enough yet. Then I'll go myself, he blurted. Ye Tian patted him on the head and quickly turned away. Chapter 160. When Ye Tian had traveled to the Zhonghai super base from the Demon Sea Grand Base, he had been careful every step of the way. Returning now, he let his guard down. He moved so quickly that he soon crossed the Changling River and covered hundreds of thousands of kilometers, arriving back at the Demon Sea Grand Base in no time. From a distance, the base looked as quiet and unchanged as ever. He didn't force his way through the grand defensive array. Instead, he walked in through a portal. Word of Ye Tian's return spread soon after. Inside a villa, Ye Yu ran up the moment he saw him. Brother, you're back. Xiao Jin and Xiao Zi bounced at his side, clearly excited to see their former master. Ye Tian smiled. Xiao Yu, you've made great progress. You've reached the peak of the great martial artist realm. He praised him, and relief eased through him. Fortunately, Ye Yu was only at an upper-level stage of cultivation, and her breakthrough speed was slow. Even with the help of a high-grade cultivation chamber, her talent problems blunted the amplification effect, and she was still training the intermediate Yuanli forging body secret technique. Progress was painfully slow. If she had already reached the Grandmaster realm, it would have been much harder to influence her development from the outside. It's just in time. If it had been a month later, it would have been bad. Ye Tian thought, relief flooding him. His plan was twofold, not only to raise Ye Yu's innate talent, but to strengthen her cultivation potential and forge an impeccable foundation for her future growth. In practical terms, establishing a perfect foundation wouldn't immediately make a dramatic difference. It wouldn't boost her attack power anywhere near 100-fold at her current level. But Ye Tian was determined. Without that flawless foundation, Ye Yu could never give rise to a pseudo-esoteric level talent, and her long-term combat effectiveness would be severely limited. He couldn't afford to leave it to chance. Refining the skin, refining the flesh, refining the bones, refining the blood, breaking through the limits of the organs. Ye Tian glanced at his sister. The Zhonghai Superbase has treasures for every step. Those things are priceless. Even the top sects can barely produce a handful of geniuses with perfect foundations. Right now, the only person I can cultivate is you. They were just about to return to the Zhonghai Superbase, and Ye Tian had prepared a special treasure for his sister to help her perfect her foundation. Ye Yu straightened, small fist clenched, pride bright in her eyes. "Brother, I've worked so hard to cultivate," she said. "Of course you have. You've worked the hardest." Ye Tian smiled and produced a small vial from his robe. Inside, a faint, shimmering pill floated, an extraordinary talent pill. It could change a martial artist's innate gift, turning potential into a decisive breakthrough. Its value was beyond words. If word of it ever reached the wider world, it would be enough to set emperors at each other's throats. Many of the imperial heirs were only merely talented. Even those blessed with exceptional gifts, those rare few who could rise to the holy level, often found it hard to make further breakthroughs. Because of that, any medicine that could actually change a person's innate talent was priceless. "What is this?" Ye Yu asked, peering at the small pill. "It's a talent dan," Ye Tian said. "It can raise your cultivation talent to the Morning Star level." Morning Star? What level is that? The Morning Star is above the extraordinary grade, Ye Tian explained. It turns an ordinary or even an above-average talent into an extraordinary grade talent. A look of dawning comprehension crossed Ye Yu's face. "If that's true, this elixir is too precious. Brother, you should take it." Ye Tian shook his head. He wasn't about to consume it. Extraordinary grade talents were vanishingly rare in the entire Demon Sea Great Base. Very few families ever produced one. If a clan were to produce a super extraordinary talent, it would almost certainly rise to the top among the great families. A pill that could elevate someone to extraordinary was the sort of treasure you almost never find, and the value of such a thing was immeasurable. So Ye Tian refused. The talent dan wasn't something to be used lightly. Its worth far exceeded any single person's immediate gain. Her brother actually produced a treasured pill that could raise her aptitude all the way to Morning Star level. A treasure like that was priceless, likely worth more than the entire Demon Sea Grand Base could offer. Ye Tian smiled and said, "Xiao Yu, this pill will push your aptitude beyond Morning Star. Take it. I want you to have it." Seeing he was serious, Ye Yu swallowed the talent dan. Her body trembled as the metamorphosis began. Pain screamed through her like thunder. For 30 brutal minutes, she felt as if she were being torn apart from the inside. Finally, the agony subsided, and the change completed. Her talent had truly advanced to Morning Star level. Ye Tian waited until she'd rested for another half hour before producing a second item. "Xiao Yu, your cold ice aptitude is only at the beginner rank. It's fine among ordinary people, but it's too limited for you. This is the Tianlin Cold Marrow. It can elevate your cold ice talent to the pinnacle. Take it." Ye Yu's eyes filled. Her brother kept handing her treasures like these, each one rarer than the last. He was being far too generous, items that were almost impossible to obtain in the Demon Sea Grand Base. She had to accept them. If she became stronger, she wouldn't be a burden to him. She could stand beside him and help him instead. She didn't refuse. She swallowed the Tianlin Cold Marrow, determination steadying her through whatever pain might come next. Ye Yu had taken the cold marrow of Tianlin and seemed to freeze solid. Half a day later, she finally woke up. The ice that had encased her body had melted away. Ye Tian examined her with his talent for appraisal and discovered that her innate gifts had shifted dramatically. Race, human. Leaf rain cultivation talent. Morning Star ice. Talent. Top tier. It really has changed into a top-tier ice talent. Ye Tian said, clearly pleased. He frowned slightly at one thing, though. A treasure that can raise weapon-class talents is exceedingly rare. I've never even heard of one. Otherwise, I would have found it for you. He then grew solemn. Xiao Yu, don't cultivate for a while. Don't disturb the sect master's realm. Ye Yu nodded without question. Her brother had decided it, so she trusted him. She was sure he meant well. Ye Tian ruffled her hair fondly. Leaf rain is excellent, he murmured, full of indulgent pride, then explained how he intended to forge her a flawless foundation. As the explanation sank in, Ye Yu's eyes widened. Brother, are we going to leave the Demon Sea base? She asked. Ye Tian nodded. There wasn't really anything to pack. He finished tidying in minutes. He told Yeyu to stay home and went to the Yue residence by himself. What surprised him immediately was the news. The Yue family's only king-rank cultivator had died. He found Yueling waiting in a pavilion. She had a new air about her, older, steadier, the childish manner gone. The recent beast tide and everything that had happened since had hardened her. Still, Ye Tian could see a worried shadow in her eyes. Losing their sole king-rank elder had left the Yue family in a precarious position. Yueling, how did your elder fall? Ye Tian asked. Yueling sighed. It wasn't just our elder. More than a dozen king-rank cultivators at the base fell as well. It's all connected to that space rift. What happened? Didn't the town seal that rift? Are there more powerful king beasts coming through? Ye Tian frowned. Nope. Yueling shook his head, then hurriedly recounted what had happened. It was the vicious sea beasts that attacked. They smashed through the king-level top array. In desperation, the king-level fighters from the 3 major bases had to rush in to hold them back. The old ancestor fell in that battle. After that, Yun Mengli sent the invincible king levels from the Lord base and the other 2 bases to stand guard around the spatial rift day and night. That's what saved the rift. Yun Mengli is back? Ye Tian muttered. He'd heard before that Yun Mengli had returned to the Zhonghai superbase, but he'd never actually seen him there, and Yun Mengli hadn't come looking for him either. He'd assumed someone as famous as Yun Mengli would surely seek him out, and yet he'd seen no sign. Now the truth fell into place. Yun Mengli hadn't stayed at Zhonghai. He had gone back to the Demon Sea Grand Base. Still, his deeds had already made him a household name in Zhonghai, even though he himself never appeared there.